British Empire, Sultan's Palace. Mr. Grand stood on the balcony of the palace. He was clearly not in the mood. He heard a familiar voice that distracted him. A guard approached Grand to find out why the gentleman was not sleeping, and if everything was okay with him. The guard noticed that the morning star was brighter than usual, and the weather was good for night walks. The gentleman confirmed this. It was at this time that he liked to walk. Gazing at the morning star, the boy remembered an old legend. The legend said that when the star was as bright as it is today, the incarnation of the goddess Alexa would appear and save the man who would become the greatest sultan. The guard couldn't believe Mr. Grand's words, and he laughed, reminding him that this was precisely why it was considered a legend. However, the guy still waited for the incarnation of the goddess Alexa, who has a beautiful soul. That same night, in the middle of one of the palace chambers, a red blanket appeared, and everything would have been fine, but it began to move. It turned out to be a red robe, and under this robe, a stranger was hiding. Taking off her hood and looking at herself in the mirror, the girl could not believe her eyes and how all this was possible. The girl began to convince herself that this whole world could be just a dream. She began to pinch herself, hit her cheeks to check the sensitivity of the pain. As it turned out, she felt it, which meant that this was not a dream after all. The girl was so absorbed in examining herself that she didn't notice that there was someone else in the room. This someone took the sword out of its sheath and said that he recognized her courage, since the girl entered his room alone. The stranger was taken by surprise and froze in place. The guy put a sword to her neck and asked who she was. The only question on the girl's mind was when he managed to wake up. The second prince of the British Empire, ruler of the capital, Castile. It immediately seemed strange to him that he slept much more soundly than usual. The ruler suspected that the stranger had slipped him a sleeping pill. The girl remained silent, which made him even more angry. She froze only because she didn't know how to explain everything to him. The fact that Castile woke up so suddenly was unexpected in itself. It was strange to worry about something like that in a situation like that. The stranger did not take her eyes off Suleiman's naked torso. She thought about him covering up, as she could not concentrate. Coming closer to her, he asked who brought her here. Was it really those annoying elders? The girl began to deny that the ruler had made a mistake, and that no one had brought her here, and that she did not understand at all how she had ended up in such a situation. Castiel believed that the stranger had decided to avoid responsibility by pretending not to know anything. It was a very serious crime to enter his bedroom without permission. Therefore, it would not be a problem for the ruler to cut off the girl's head right now. The stranger could not believe that she would die right here in the prime of her life. Suddenly, Castiel abruptly lowered his sword. Something about the girl interested him. He took the crystal that hung around the girl's neck and said that it was a sign that she was the property of the Sultan. The Sultan asked if this was a joke from his mother and not from the elders. A smile appeared on his face as he assumed that the girl had come to spend the night with him. The stranger became worried. She did not understand what he wanted to say by this. She began to shake her head, denying that there was no point in this. Castiel chuckled. It seemed like the girl wasn't going to open her mouth until the very end. The Sultan warned that if she did not speak, he would have to take her to the torture chamber. She looked at him with a pitiful look, hoping that she had misheard. The first thing that came to her mind was that she would be put in the electric chair. But then the girl realized that such a method of torture did not exist in this era. She realized that if she didn't start speaking normally, she would die. The stranger began to meow throughout the room. Realizing what she had just done, the girl suddenly covered her mouth with her hands. Castiel stood dumbfounded. The girl thought that it would be better if she died anyway. Otherwise, she would now burn with shame. Forcing a smile, she said that she didn't want to die. They say that life is a series of unpredictable events, but it was hard to believe in such absurdity. No matter what she said, the Sultan would not listen to her. Everyone at the market became alarmed and began to catch this cat. The girl found herself in a world she was seeing for the first time. Not only was everything unfamiliar, but she was in the form of a cat. People cornered her, and to their delight, the game of tag ended. But the cat did not give up and showed aggression. All she wanted was to be fed. But people didn't understand her. A man from the crowd began to ask everyone to let the cat go, because she was so small and cute, but the crowd did not give in. It turned out that the government was looking for cats, and this one had white fur and eyes of different colors, which was a great rarity. While the crowd was arguing, the cat decided to escape. She pushed off from the standing box and jumped over the fence. Suddenly, Her paws broke off, and she began to fall down. The cat couldn't believe it. She had almost managed to escape. The animal was eventually caught and placed in a cage. Those watching her were surprised that after some time, the cat was still angry, but decided not to pay attention to it. There were tears in her eyes. She was thinking about how to quickly gain freedom, since she was not just a stray cat, but a person. Finally, Sarah could rest without any worries. It was nice to just lie there without unnecessary thoughts. The girl came to her senses, deciding that she couldn't waste her precious time like this. She was going to watch all the movies she had been putting off. Sarah stood up to get some snacks, as her vision went dark. Unfortunately, these were the last memories of her real world. Suddenly and without warning, her life was cut short. Having dozed off for a second, the cat lost track of the time she had been in this cage. The lights drowned out the crying of Sarah's cat, whose voice rang in her head, as if after her death the girl had found herself in some kind of fictional story. In this story, she received the body of a fragile kitten. Living on the streets had been very difficult lately. Perhaps this prison was a little safer for her. Here, memories of the men saying that the ruler was looking for a cat, and they couldn't miss this chance, surfaced in Sarah's head. She decided to try, although she didn't know the essence, but clearly her life would be better if she became the Sultan's cat. Sarah decided to take a risk by making the ruler her servant and live in wealth forever. The cat smelled food. Someone was frying meat nearby, and she started drooling. The man saw that the cat perked up at the sight of meat. He offered her a little, and she tried to show with her whole appearance how hungry she was. The man began to laugh, saying that she shouldn't even dream about him, since he was just his piece of meat. Sarah was furious. He could afford to bully her like that just because she was a cat. Someone entered the room and distracted the observer, and the piece of meat fell out of his hands. The cat began to reach after him. Someone suddenly stepped on the meat with their foot. The guy was outraged that there was garbage scattered everywhere in this place. He reached for the cat, grabbing her by the scruff of the neck, saying that she best matched the description. The guy couldn't believe that this piece of shit was a legendary cat. Sarah was very outraged by such a phrase in her direction. When the cat heard that she was being chosen to go to the Sultan's palace, she was happy. Of course, it was good that she was released so quickly, but until now, no one has explained why she was needed. For a second, Sarah wondered if it might have something to do with sacrifices. At the threshold of the palace, the cat was greeted with great hospitality. She couldn't believe that she had ended up in such a place. She hoped that it wasn't a dream. On the columns, Sarah saw a red diamond. It was the most expensive stone. The place turned out to be good, but she didn't know when she might be kicked out, so she decided that if she took one diamond, then she wouldn't have to worry about anything for the rest of her life. The cat wanted to find her way home, even though it would take a very long time. She was not going to go back outside. Having jumped onto the column, she completely forgot that she was still too small to climb to such a height. From the sidelines, people watched the cat and were touched. The guy chuckled, saying that she was very interesting. This cat from the prophecy. The guy who brought the cat asked Mr. Grand if he was sure it was the same cat. In his eyes, she was just a vile animal. The gentleman was sure of it. He picked up the cat and said that this was the embodiment of Britain that he had been waiting for. According to him, the cat was the guardian of the goddess who would protect the new sultan. The guy laughed and began to apologize for not introducing himself to her yet. He was Grand, the priest of this palace. He looked at Sarah with a gentle gaze, saying that he had been waiting for her, the cat from the prophecy, for a long time. Holding her close, they walked inside. Sarah, realizing that Grand knew she was human. Having placed the cat on the poof, he began to tell this long story. There is a legend in his kingdom. Long ago, the country was plunged into a long drought. All the springs dried up. The streets were filled with sadness from the endless epidemics. When all the sounds of life almost died down, the goddess of water took pity on the inhabitants of the kingdom she protected. She used her power and saved the country. Everyone wanted the goddess to stay with them, but this wish was not destined to come true. Before leaving, she promised one thing. When Venus shines brightest, the incarnation of a goddess with a beautiful soul will come to them, the one who will save the greatest sultan. The prophecy said that the incarnation would appear in the form of a cat, which is why the priest asked to look for a cat. Turning his attention to Sarah, he realized that she didn't really believe him. It was even strange to her that the goddess's messenger was a cat. She believed that a person with a beautiful soul should look different, at least be a young, cheerful lady who looks like a saint. In any case, Sarah understood that past life or this one, you couldn't say that about her. She believed that a beautiful soul was something that only the main characters of fairy tales had, but she couldn't even dream of such a thing. Sarah was the kind of person who thought only about survival every day. Her life could not be a fairy tale. Seeing the cat crying, Grand realized that he had touched on too difficult a subject. Although he had divine eyes to find a suitable soul, he could not read minds. The stranger tried to calm her down, and Sarah really liked it. It was very touching for Grand. It seems she trusted him. The cat's stomach growled from hunger, and she blushed from embarrassment, although it was not visible because of the fur. The priest realized that he had made a mistake, because first he needed to fill her stomach. After some time, the table was filled with various foods, all of which were just for Sarah. The cat immediately pounced on the piece of meat. Grand laughed. If he had known that she was so hungry, he would have fed her much earlier. Sarah decided that instead of going back out on the streets, she would stay here in comfort and live up to the cat in the prophecy. While the cat was eating everything she saw, the priest said that there was one secret that few people knew. He asked to listen to him carefully, as there was a way to return back to human form. Sarah was alarmed, because if there was such a way, why had he remained silent until now? Perhaps it will not be possible to return to the previous world, but it will be possible to become a human being. The cat began to touch him with her paw, so that he would continue the story. But the priest said that he would tell everything after dinner. This method was at the experimental level, but why not try it? Sarah began to climb on Grand, and he laughed, taking this as a positive answer. Taking the cat, he led her into the bath. She was very unhappy about this, since there was no talk of this. The girls asked her to be patient for a little while, but Sarah was furious. She thought that she had trusted the guy in vain. She hadn't thought that a bath could be so heavy. Now she understood how her cat felt. The priest said that the time had almost come, after which he put a special collar on the cat, which he had made himself, and asked her not to take it off. He understood her thoughts after they hung the bell around her neck, but it was better to keep it to herself. An employee came in and informed the priest that all preparations were complete. Grand extended his hand to the cat and said that it was time to go and become a human. Her joy knew no bounds. The priest brought her to some strange place. It didn't look like anyone lived there. He felt that she was worried because she had not been in this place. Sarah saw the sleeping guy, but Grand began to reassure her that she had nothing to worry about, since the stranger was under the influence of sleeping pills, but his words did not convince her. In order to become human, she had to awaken the prince with a kiss. Sarah began to struggle. She didn't like this idea at all. The priest admitted that the prophecy was a little strange. According to him, she should have already felt the energy of the curse filling the room. At first glance, the room seemed simply large and empty, but it was filled with a gloomy, bloody hue that was a little unpleasant. Sarah wondered what kind of curse could cause such feelings. Grand said that this was the room of Castiel, the second prince. The guy is the most important person in the country. Everyone thinks that Castiel will become the next Sultan. The priest understood what the cat was feeling, but unfortunately, the prince was suffering from some unknown curse. No one could make any progress in removing it, so they hoped for the incarnation of the goddess Britain. Grand was sure that it was indeed a cat. It was her choice whether to believe or not. But if the incarnation came into contact with a person who was suitable for the place of the Sultan, it could become a person. The priest asked her to just try, since a kiss was necessary between the incarnation and the prince. He decided not to put pressure on the cat, but to leave them alone, allowing them to get to know each other better. Sarah began to rush after him, but Grand assured her that the prince would not wake up because he was under the effect of a sleeping pill, and he would be outside, so no one would enter. After wishing her good luck, the guy left. The cat was beside herself with anger, because no matter how much she wanted to become a human, how could she kiss a person she was seeing for the first time? She collected her thoughts and decided that she had to do it. After all, it was just a kiss. Deciding that there was no point in hanging around here all night and being afraid, the cat approached the prince and kissed him. She did it, but it was very awkward, especially since she was kissing a man in cat form. Sarah's heart began to beat wildly, as if it would burst out of her chest. Losing consciousness, she fell to the floor, pulling the blanket off the bed that covered her. Castiel woke up, not remembering how he fell asleep, much less how he ended up in his bedroom. Usually, he felt so tired after sleeping, but today it was much easier. He felt as if a dog was licking him, but he did not understand where the animal could have come from. Rising from his bed, he discovered a girl sitting near his mirror. Taking out his sword, he asked her who she was and how she got here. Sarah didn't know what to answer him. There were a lot of thoughts in her head. She only started to meow loudly in response. The only sound she managed to make was a cat sound, as she had absolutely no idea what to do in such a situation. The prince's head was also spinning. He didn't understand why she was only meowing. Did she really not understand anything herself? It seemed like this was her last chance to ask the prince to take her back. Sarah was about to start a dialogue when she realized that she could not speak human language. Castiel started first. He realized that she was not involved in this, but still entered the royal bedroom without permission. He had no choice but to hold the girl accountable, so the guy demanded that she answer his questions. Sarah wanted to scream that she couldn't speak, no matter how much she wanted to, and the worst thing was that she didn't know how long she would be in this state. Again, there was that pain in her chest, and again she was losing her strength. Castiel began to call for help. The prince didn't have time to do anything before the girl disappeared, leaving only a red veil in her place. The prince was at a loss, not understanding what kind of woman she was. The guards saw suspicious smoke coming from the room and gave the order to check if there was a fire or an attack. The cat stood behind the door, hoping that no one would notice her. Grand came up from behind, took the cat in his arms and exhaled. It was lucky that the soldiers didn't notice her. The cat didn't understand what he was happy about, because he didn't even know what happened to her because of him. The priest pressed the cat to his chest and began to leave before anything happened. Having found a safe place, Grand asked the cat how the meeting with the prince went, whether she had turned into a human, and whether the legend had not lied. Sarah decided not to tell him anything. The priest was very surprised that it didn't work, but he didn't get upset, saying that they don't judge by one attempt and that he could try again. After stroking the cat's head, he suggested that she lie down and sleep, as she was probably very tired. She wanted to ask him about many things, but she wanted to sleep much more. A lot happened yesterday, but today, everything was quiet. No matter how high her status was, it was hard to wander around alone in cat form. Gran carried Sarah somewhere, saying that the meeting would be short and she had nothing to worry about. They arrived at the appointed place. The priest hesitated a little. It seemed they had made someone wait. Before Sarah was the most powerful and brilliant person in the country, the great Emma, the Sultan's wife. The queen noticed that the priest and the cat were a little late. Grand immediately began to show his respect to the great Emma. He held the cat up, saying that this was the very cat from the prophecy that Her Majesty wanted to see. Sarah didn't think she would meet such a person. In her opinion, she looked too young. The girl asked if this was the same cat, the incarnation of the goddess Britain. The color of her eyes and fur. Everything matched the legend, small and cute, like a white cloud. Emma said about someone that he would come soon, so they would discuss everything later, and also warned that the guy might be angry that a woman was brought into his room. Grand warned that the cat understands everything, so he asked to be a little more restrained. The girl asked if she could take the cat instead of her son. The priest refused. As it was impossible, the cat was given by heaven just for him. Emma was a little upset. She felt sorry to give such a cutie to such a cruel man. Sarah heard a familiar voice as Her Majesty's son entered the room. In front of her stood the same guy in whose room the cat ended up. Her Majesty greeted her only son and invited him to sit down and have tea together. The prince seemed not to hear her and began to complain that his mother did not understand him, since he had been given such difficult tasks by the Sultan. He found a cat curled up on the table and immediately asked his mother what kind of ball of fur it was. Sarah began to worry that the prince would recognize her, but then she realized that he had only seen her in human form. Castiel didn't understand why the cat was looking at him so suspiciously and smiling. Before drinking tea, the guy wanted to ask a question regarding the commotion that happened last night in the palace. Mrs. Emma was aware of this incident. The prince continued, saying that a woman had come into his room at night, and he was sure that his mother knew about this too. The woman smiled and said that she had nothing to do with it, and Castiel realized that his mother would not tell him anything more. The Sultan noticed that, in addition to him and his mother, a priest was present at the tea party, which was quite surprising. The guy was right in noticing that Grand had a very interesting story for the prince. Emma said that the creature her son called a furball would be officially adopted, so he should treat her with respect. Every heir must have a cat, and this one was quite hard to find. It was prophetic, so it would be very useful to the prince. Castiel hated to seem biased, but he didn't think it was worth paying attention to such nonsense as this legend. According to the priest, it was not only a matter of prophecy. Sultans always had cats, and if the prince keeps one with him, it will become another aid to his power, Grand said. The prince was convinced that he could defend his right to the throne with his own strength. The Grand asked if the Sultan was feeling better, and when he answered in the affirmative, he said that the cat had come into his room briefly the previous night. This was considered cat magic, so the priest strongly recommended keeping the cat with you, as it would be useful in many ways. Realizing that there was no point in arguing, the prince agreed to take the cat. Sarah rejoiced in vain. The Sultan, instead of becoming her servant, left her in a cage for several days, and he himself did not even appear. The girl began to think about whether she should repeat the actions that made her human, but then she decided that she would never do that. A girl named Arin couldn't believe that the cat was put in such a depressing place. Even though she saw it every day, it was more like a dream. Her older brother was too busy for her to meet him, and there were no other people her age in the palace. The cat was like a friend to her. The girl asked her not to take care of it. Arin was very happy to see the cat. They had similar personalities, so Sarah was a little worried about her. The girl brought some kind of bag. She decided that the cat was really bored here, so she brought her toys that would belong only to her. Sarah couldn't believe it. She was an adult inside the cat, but unfortunately, no one knew this except the priest. Throwing aside all thoughts that she was a human, the cat had fun with the girl, and the two of them were having a lot of fun. Having played enough, the cat fell asleep right in the middle of the room, and when she woke up, she discovered that Castiel had returned. She detected a vile energy that had not been there during the day, an energy even worse than the last time they had met in this room. The cat began to wake up the Sultan, but he was so ill that he didn't even react to anything. Castiel's symptoms were similar to those Sarah had before coming to this world. Castiel suffered from a curse from early childhood. It was not to say that he was a good person, but the cat was obliged not to let him die. His whole body was covered in black spots from the curse. Sarah placed her paws on his chest, thinking in her head that he couldn't die. Without realizing what she had just done, the cat decided to try again. The spots on Castiel's body began to disappear. Sarah thought that she had managed to suppress the curse. At least when she was around, he felt better. The cat felt unwell. Her body seemed to be falling apart. The next morning, when the prince woke up, he realized that the pain in his chest had disappeared. There was a cat sleeping next to him. Grand's words that the cat would help him turned out to be true. Castiel never thought he would find a being that could ease his pain. Hugging the cat, he told her that she had helped him a lot. Waking up next to the prince, the cat jumped up in panic. The guy began to laugh and calm her down. The future Sultan showed the hand that Sarah had bitten in his sleep, but then added that she had saved him. The cat couldn't believe that she did it. Stroking her neck, Castiel said that she would be his cat. She was very surprised, not understanding why the attitude towards her had changed so abruptly. As soon as Erin had a budget, she bought the cat a dress. Sarah stared at it, thinking that it looked completely uncomfortable. Why would she wear it? The inauguration ceremony of the ruler was about to take place. They had to show the nobility and beauty of the cat. Sometimes, the girl answered as if she understood what the cat was thinking. Having dressed up the animal, Erin was delighted. She was sure that in front of her was a sweet and gentle cat, full of nobility. Since the animal had never been dressed before, the girl decided not to sit in the room, but to take it to a beautiful place. She brought the cat to the place where she usually hides when someone wants to scold her. Having placed the animal on the stone, Erin went to make a beautiful wreath for it. Seeing a bird nearby, Sarah tried to reason with herself. She should have behaved calmly and not acted like a cat. Her sanity had gone out the window. The bird was clearly irritating her. The cat started running and climbing a tree to catch the bird. Her paws slipped and she began to fall down. Suddenly, someone caught her. Sarah couldn't take her eyes off her savior. In front of her was a handsome and noble man. The stranger smiled. He really liked this cat, especially her unusual eyes. Sarah's thoughts were only about this handsome man. Unlike Castiel, who had a scary atmosphere around him, this guy gave off the feeling of a prince on a white horse. Castiel was, of course, handsome too, but the fair-haired one seemed much more attractive to the cat. Seeing the stone on her collar, the stranger realized that she lived in the Sultan's harem. He wondered why there was no one near the cat, since it was dangerous for her to be alone. The animal agreed with him in her thoughts, because she had already been through a lot. The stranger decided not to take away the cat's freedom to run around the palace. especially since he wasn't the only one who felt stuffy there. Sarah didn't know what to do with this information. The cat saw the flowers, picked one, presented it to the guy, meowing, but thinking in her head that there was such a beauty next to him, and he definitely shouldn't be sad. The stranger did not understand this gesture and thought that she was going to eat the plant. Sarah felt completely frustrated by the lack of understanding. The guy gave the cat an artificial flower, asking her not to touch the real ones anymore. She was very happy, as it was the first flower given to her in her life, and from such a handsome man. Their idyll was interrupted by Aaron, who couldn't find the cat for a long time. The girl said that they had better go back, when she noticed that same stranger in front of her. It was Prince Theo. Aaron looked guilty. She couldn't even imagine that the cat would be with the prince. The guy handed the cat to the girl, adding that she was lucky to have such a beautiful companion. After stroking the animal, the prince said goodbye. Aaron thought Theo was very handsome, and Sarah supported her completely. The girl admitted that she fell in love with him like everyone else, and dreamed of being sent to his palace, and not to Castiel's palace. Of course, Prince Castiel was good too, but his appearance was frightening. Aaron noticed a flower on the cat. She was surprised by such a gift from the prince. She began to say what it meant in the language of flowers, but without finishing the sentence, she told the cat not to take it to heart. Theo should have known about this, but for some reason he didn't tell. Sarah was very tired that day. She noticed Castiel's gaze on her. The cat decided to simply ignore him. The prince came up from behind and touched her, but the animal could not understand what he wanted. "It seems they feed you well. You used to be so thin." Sarah heard these words addressed to her. These words did not upset her very much. The prince took her in his arms, as the priest said that he should be closer to her, and then the curse would weaken. Having placed the cat on the poof, he asked her to wait a little, as he had not yet finished his work. Having plucked a flower from the cat, he asked if this decoration bothered her. Sarah tried to show with all her appearance that the guy would return her gift from the handsome man. Although the flower looked ordinary to Castiel, he was confused by its bad meaning. He squeezed the flower into his fist, saying that he didn't know who gave it to her, but it was unlikely that the person did it with good intentions. Sarah couldn't understand why the prince was acting so strangely, because he was just a simple flower. The cat was upset because she was only helped because of the legend, and treated well only because she was the incarnation of the goddess. She felt like she was playing according to a script created by others. Castiel wondered if the useless cat was overeating, as she had become plump. The guy didn't even realize that she understood everything, and Sarah was very outraged. She started climbing up his chest, trying to prove that she wasn't chubby. The prince laughed and called her a pervert, because this time she chose his chest. Sarah's indignation simply knew no bounds. Aaron brought a whole suitcase of jewelry for the cat. Sarah noticed that the girl had been talking all morning, and her eyes were shining. The girl took the box and was going to take away what they would not need. The cat decided to help too, deciding that she could at least carry the jewelry. She was distracted by her new acquaintance. Sarah's eyes sparkled again, and the handsome Theo stood in front of her. "They say that the Sultan's cat should not be left alone," the prince said, stroking the animal. According to Theo, no one has yet understood the charm of the cat, since she was left alone again. The prince hugged the cat, saying that he was very worried that she would cry because he was not around. Castiel entered the room and asked in a displeased tone to put the cat back in its place. Coming closer, he asked more insistently to put the animal in its place. The boys were both brothers and princes, but they were very different. Castiel was already shouting, but Theo was not going to listen to him. The blonde man said that he had already met the cat and become friends with her, so he was glad to see her again. Looking his brother in the eye, he said that it seemed she wanted to run away because she didn't like the owner. Taking the animal by force, Castiel said that this cat is from the prophecy, and does Theo even know what it means? Turning away from his brother, he said that none of this mattered, since they would not see each other again after the inauguration, so he should not create trouble now. Theo admitted that he would like to stay in the capital for some time. Remembering the purple flower that was on the cat, Castiel asked if it was his doing. The prince laughed and admitted that it was a small gift. Castiel was still angry at his brother, saying that he knew perfectly well the meaning of this flower. There was a legend about this flower. The couple was blessed by the goddess. Their love ended in misunderstanding because the woman was loved by another man. It was a story about a man who dies at the end. Theo never thought his brother would worry about something like that. The Sultan did not calm down. He did not understand why it was necessary to give an ornament that brings bad luck. He warned that he would monitor his brother's actions while he was in the capital. Before leaving, Castiel urged Theo to quickly finish his treatment and return to his homeland. The blonde-haired man whispered after his brother that he would take everything that belonged to him, even the cat. The cat was so afraid that she couldn't say anything. Aaron ran into the room. With a displeased face, Castiel asked where the girl had gone, and she began to explain that she needed to take her things. The prince handed the cat to the girl and asked her to take care of her, as he no longer wanted to see anyone else with her. Aaron promised that this would not happen again. When the prince left, the girl wondered who he was talking about. That same night, the cat waited for Castiel, but he did not come. She began to worry that the curse was hurting him again. The cat thought about how Castiel had suddenly come and started acting like a child whose toy had been taken away. She reassured herself that the prince would not be jealous of something like this. When His Majesty returned, the cat was already asleep. He sat down next to her on the bed and said that while she was sleeping peacefully, she did not even suspect how those around her were feeling. He felt so bad when he saw her next to that guy. The cat didn't even understand this, the prince thought. The next day, the Sultan's palace. Having dressed the cat in everything in a row, Aaron panicked that the inauguration ceremony was tomorrow, and she still hadn't chosen an outfit for her. The girl's brother looked closely at the animal. He could not believe that this was the same cat that he brought. Sarah couldn't believe they were brother and sister. Aaron threatened her brother to keep his mouth shut, since this was the prince's precious cat. Castiel began to avoid the animal after that incident. She couldn't understand what she had done wrong. The prince entered the chambers and kicked out Aaron and her brother, citing the fact that it was already late. Looking at the cat, he said that he had not seen her awake for a long time. Castiel couldn't tell if she was wagging her tail because she was in a bad mood or something else. It seems like the guy has learned to understand her signs a little. The prince admitted that he too has had a lot of problems in recent days. It was about some woman. She was being hugged by another man, and he couldn't even bear the thought of it. Castiel was surprised, as he had never felt this way before. The cat put her paw on him, trying to support him. The prince asked if she was trying to console him by jumping on his lap. The cat thought that he was lucky only this time. Looking at the animal, Castiel felt tenderness. He could not believe that he had treated her badly before. If the prince were in her place, he wouldn't have tried to calm her down after such treatment. He stopped petting her. Grabbing the cat by the head, he asked if she had done the same with that guy. Sarah woke up in human form. In front of her sat a stranger who was clearly very glad to see her. It was the goddess who brought her into this world and waited a long time to meet Sarah. The girl asked if she was the goddess Britain, and she confirmed it. Sarah never thought that the goddess actually existed. The girl had many questions, but the first thing she asked was why she was brought into this world. Britain needed a man to convey its will. The gods were perfect beings who could not simply appear before people. That is why they had to look for someone to represent them. Sarah realized that the goddess needed help, but she didn't understand why a cat. Britain apologized for having to do so because the girl's power was unstable. Sarah couldn't figure out why she was in human form now. They were in a dream world created by the power of Britain, where one could be in one's original form. Also, the girl could adopt and use the power of the goddess. Britain was decorating a fountain and asked the girl to try to extract water from it. The goddess explained that she is the goddess of water and stars, so naturally her incarnation can use this power. Sarah had to feel the energy of water and become one with it, thus revealing its full potential. The girl had to close her eyes and stretch out her arms, feel the energy flowing through her body, and ask the water to respond to the call. Britain assured the girl that she should not doubt. She would succeed. It was amazing for Sarah. She did it all. This was the power of the goddess Britain, and if Sarah learned to control it, she would be able to do amazing things. The girl realized that if she learned these skills, she would be able to protect herself from any danger. Britain's strength was healing and restoration. Sarah immediately wondered if it was possible to influence the curse. If another god intervenes, it could lead to undesirable consequences. The girl immediately became depressed. She decided that perhaps the world would be better off without her. Britain reassured her. But time was running out, and it was time for them to say goodbye. As she left, the goddess said that soon the man next to Sarah would be in danger. The man who shares his destiny with her. They need each other. Sarah couldn't believe that Castiel was her destiny. The goddess warned that in the future, the girl would face some unpleasant things, but if she could overcome everything, she would get the life she wanted so much. Britain asked Sarah not to give up under any circumstances. The goddess could not fully reveal her power of peace, but gave the girl a small gift. When Sarah woke up, she couldn't understand whether it was all a dream or reality. She realized that she had returned to her human form again and could speak. This meant that she slept with a man in the same bed. Sarah decided to test the power that was given to her, and she felt that the energy was a little different from usual. She remembered the goddess's words that soon the person next to her would be in danger. Some people burst into the room. They noticed Sarah. The girl tried to wake up the prince, but it was all in vain. She remembered the goddess's words about danger. The strangers were surprised to see someone awake, and they let it slip among themselves that they had not been warned about this. They decided to deal with Sarah first. If she hadn't had time to react, things would have been very bad. The girl lay on Castiel, protecting him with her body. She couldn't let them die like this. She remembered the goddess's gift, and it seemed to work. One of the attackers ordered the second to deal with her. Since she had some kind of strange power, Sarah asked them to stop. She lacked energy. The prince came to his senses and blocked the blow of the approaching weapon. Castiel began to fight them. Sarah realized she had to concentrate to help. The prince tried to find out who sent them, but the guys were clearly not talkative. Leaving only one alive, Castiel demanded to know the name of the customer. But the attacker was not afraid of death and was not going to talk. The stranger fell, showed no more signs of life. The prince said that they had poison. The guy noticed the girl. She was crying. Taking her head, he asked her to wipe away her tears. Castiel asked why she interfered with them. He thought they were in cahoots. The guy demanded an explanation of who she was, but Sarah didn't know where to start. It seemed to him that the girl was sent by his mother, so he looked for information. The problem was that no one had seen such a girl in the palace. Sarah tried to convince the prince that she had done nothing wrong. Castiel was going to investigate the matter, but she saved his life, so the prince would not want to turn her in. The footsteps of the guards were heard in the corridor. This time they arrived faster than usual. The prince hid Sarah in the closet because if she was caught, she would be killed. She resisted, but he insistently told her to stay inside. Brother Aaron came to the prince with information. The hired killers had an escape route planned. One of the servants turned out to be a traitor and sprayed sleeping gas. Unfortunately, all those involved were found dead. The guy said that it would be difficult to find evidence, since there were almost no traces left. Everything was cleaned up, but the only clue was the poison in the mouths of the killers. Oddly enough, this object looked like an ordinary stone. Castiel thought it wasn't just a stone, but an artifact. Not everyone could get such a thing from the palace. Obviously, Theo and Catherine had arranged everything. The prince left further investigation to Aaron's brother. It was a problem. An assassination attempt the day before the inauguration. The enemies had the audacity to attack the prince right in his palace. He wanted to watch, but it was too much. 2 years ago, Castiel asked the queen for permission to execute them. He wanted to take control and nip evil in the bud. The queen was against this and did not allow it. The prince was outraged. He believed that those who looked down on the Sultan should not be let go. Emma said ironically that her son has always been like this, and that as a mother she respects his lifestyle. This angered Castiel, as he had not come to listen to her jokes. The mother asked her son to think about other princes, because initially there were 6 of them, and now they were left alone with Theo. The woman didn't believe that they could really die from illness or accidents. Now was not the time to create more enemies for herself. Castiel believed that if he left it all alone, it would all happen again. In Her Majesty's opinion, their enemies had the support of the nobility and the love of the people. It was not so easy to get rid of such people. Emma asked her son to be patient for 5 years. She promised to give him this position within 5 years. 2 years have passed. All this time the prince was like a dog on a leash. He was going to wait for the right moment. He ordered Brother Arnie to continue surveillance and report everything to him. Castiel couldn't believe that the training he had done since childhood was useless, but it kept him conscious. It was a dangerous situation. The guy couldn't move, and he was saved only because someone kept calling him. In front of him was this girl again. The prince could not understand why she was trying to protect him, although she herself was in danger. He was also haunted by the question of how such power could appear in such a weak body. Castiel instinctively hid it when the guards arrived. Even last time, his action was not normal behavior, but he did not know why he did it. The prince wanted to see her again when she disappeared. He wanted to know why she did this. Returning to the room, he realized that he had forgotten to order the cleaning. He was afraid to open the closet, afraid because he might not find her there anymore. However, when he opened the closet, Castiel saw a sweetly sleeping cat. The guy was dejected. He thought that the stranger had disappeared again. And what else could he expect? Leaning over the cat, he said that the animal was sleeping again, while so much was happening around it. When Sarah woke up, she couldn't understand why she wasn't in the closet, since she had fallen asleep in it. The room was in disarray, of which there was no trace left. Could it all have been a dream, she thought? This can't be, since yesterday's clothes were lying in the room, which means it wasn't a dream. The cat heard a familiar voice, Castiel's voice. He was sitting right in front of her. She was about to run away, but the prince grabbed her by the skin. He demanded that the cat look him straight in the eyes. Castiel yelled at her that she was very much at fault no matter how you look at it. The prince was furious that she dared to enter the bedroom of a member of the royal family without permission. The cat thought that he had guessed everything. Eyes like hers were one of a kind. Castiel continued his monologue that the cat always appears where the stranger disappears. This means that she... But the prince did not have time to finish. He was told that it was time to get ready, and he left. Sarah began to worry that she was almost discovered. She couldn't do that now. Aaron entered the room, wishing the cat good morning. The girl wanted to let her rest, but she had little time. Aaron began to choose clothes for the cat, since today was the coronation of Prince Castiel. The atmosphere was more serious than Sarah had imagined, but still solemn. And if she were the prince, she would have been very nervous. It was nice to see Castiel like this sometimes. The high priest congratulated the prince on becoming the new sultan. All those gathered around expressed their congratulations to the sultan, wishing him many good things. Castiel thought that the girl who disappeared was not here. He looked for her everywhere, but failed. At least one person in the palace should have seen her. The only connection that existed was the cat. In his head, it all sounded like nonsense, because what could they possibly be connected by other than a similar pendant on their neck? Overall, there were some common features, such as a mystical atmosphere, a frightened but firm attitude. The most mysterious thing for the prince was that the stranger always disappeared where the cat remained. The cat was depressed and very tired. She thought about that conversation with the sultan and why he had such bad thoughts about her. If it weren't for Aaron's support, the cat definitely wouldn't have been able to cope with all of this. The girl went away to bring the cat something tasty. Sarah decided not to waste time and enjoy the fresh air. She sensed some energy and jumped onto the balcony to take a closer look at the place where it was coming from. It felt like someone was calling her, and most likely it was a goddess. Energy was drawn from the water. The cat felt very pleasant touching it, as if all her worries were being washed away. After stretching a little, she fell into the fountain. Sarah didn't know how to swim in this body at all, and didn't know how to get out. The cat really didn't want to die like that. The animal was saved by some man. If he had not managed to do it in time, she would have died. Her savior turned out to be Theo. The cat was surprised to see him in front of her. The prince said that it was dangerous to wander around so late alone, as some psycho could kidnap her. It's a good thing Prince Theo escaped the party and noticed Sarah not too late. The cat noticed that the prince looked too cheerful for a man who had run away from a party. Holding the cat in his arms, the guy sat down and thought. After some time, he asked her if she liked this palace. Sarah thought about this question. She had many good moments here, for example, that she met Aaron. As for Castiel, the Sultan often stirred her heart, but the cat was not sure that she liked it. For Theo, the palace was a cage in which there was no freedom. There was only a struggle between the chosen ones and the unchosen. It was hard for him to endure this. Suddenly, Castiel appeared abruptly. He was clearly angry. The Sultan was shouting that he had searched the entire palace, and she was sitting here. Theo decided to turn everything into a joke, saying that the party was held in his honor, which meant he couldn't leave it. The Sultan pretended not to hear what his brother said. He pounced on him with accusations that he took the cat. Sarah tried to show with all her appearance that everything was not so, but unfortunately, she could not speak. Theo explained that he found the cat in a fountain when she was drowning, and he was lucky to save her in time. It then dawned on Sarah that the Sultan was worried because she had disappeared, which was completely unlike him. Prince Theo sarcastically advised his brother to be careful, otherwise he could easily lose his precious cat. Castiel was furious that the prince was allowing himself to do this, and the latter did not calm down. He began to ridicule the fact that the cat was so expensive that the Sultan did not even give her a name. Theo believed that the cat ran away precisely because of this attitude. Having taken the animal by force, Castiel threatened his brother not to attract his attention with such things anymore, because he is smart and understands what the Sultan is talking about. Laughing, Theo turned to leave if his brother was so uncomfortable. Sarah didn't understand if they were going back to the party, but then she realized that the entrance was on the completely different side. The Sultan began his monologue that he had been thinking for a long time about the cat and the stranger, because they had never appeared in the same place at the same time. They were connected by unique eye colors, the Sultan's mark on their neck. With this, he tried to say that all his guesses were correct, and he would be able to confirm them when he kissed the cat. Castiel asked the cat not to run away, as it would only take a second. The Sultan kissed his cat. An incredibly beautiful girl appeared in front of him. He exclaimed that he thought it was her. Castiel seemed to be offended by Theo's words and asked the girl how he could address her. The stranger replied that she did not have a name that could be used here, only the name that was given to her by the director of the orphanage where she grew up. The Sultan suggested giving her the name Brittany. This name meant that she was a child of the goddess Britain, and if the girl was indeed her incarnation, then it would be the most appropriate. Brittany just realized that she was wearing next to nothing, and it would be nice to go back to the palace. Grand appeared out of nowhere. The priest was glad that he finally found them. Brittany cried out that Grand was right and apologized for not believing him right away. The priest opened his mouth in surprise, but a second later he fell to his knees, greeting the girl, saying that her energy had become clearer. She was exactly the embodiment of the goddess of water. The girl began to ask Grand to get up. She was embarrassed by his behavior, and then the Sultan intervened, who demanded that he get up from his knees, since they had already attracted a lot of unnecessary attention with the bright light. The priest said that Brittany's appearance needed to be changed quickly before people came and noticed something was wrong. The girl had not noticed this oddity before. Grand's smile was very sad. Brittany was immediately transformed, finding herself in clothes. The Sultan said that she would now need a lot of new things. His Majesty said that he would inform Elliot's sister so that she would look into the matter. The girl wondered if he was talking about Aaron. Castiel came very close to Brittany, took her by the face, and asked if she was okay, if she felt anything strange, and then added that if the transformation had any similar effects, then she should tell him. The girl could not understand why the Sultan was so kind today. Recently, Brittany was in so much pain that she fell out of bed. But after receiving Britain's power, everything returned to normal, so she decided not to tell Castiel about it. By order of the Sultan, Grand will help her. The priest wants to help the girl adapt to life in the palace. Brittany laughed because she was so tired of studying while preparing for the entrance exams. The Sultan was puzzled as to what she was talking about, and realizing that she had said something stupid, the girl immediately corrected herself, promising to try, but asked him to take care of her. Castiel didn't have time now, so he decided to discuss the rest later. Brittany remembered that the guy had burned it right in the middle of the ceremony. Hugging his new acquaintance, the Sultan promised her that they would see each other a little later, and a spark seemed to flare up between them. Brittany decided to take a nap, but she was awakened by someone's familiar voice. When she lay down, she didn't think that someone could enter the room. Aaron stood in front of her with a surprised look. The girl couldn't believe that it was the same cat. Brittany confirmed that it was the one she was taking care of. Leaning towards Aaron, the cat girl asked if she would help her like she had done before. Aaron couldn't believe her ears, but she was even more surprised that she, a completely ordinary girl, could become an assistant to the incarnation of a goddess. Brittany immediately interrupted her and asked to call her simply by her first name. The girl happily agreed, especially since she really liked the cat's name. Brittany asked if she could go for a walk in the flower garden, which she thought looked very beautiful. Irene didn't really like this idea, since a stranger might attract too much unwanted attention. The thing was that for their empire, such an appearance was extremely rare. The assistant came up with an idea on how to hide Brittany's obvious differences and began rummaging through the suitcase to find something. She provided her with a veil, but the goddess incarnation found it too attention-grabbing. Aryan reassured her that such veils were always worn by noble ladies or priests, so everything would be fine. Grand entered the room and greeted the embodiment of Britain. Brittany asked him to stop using that weird greeting and just call her by her name. The priest laughed and said it was a cool name for a cat. The cat girl wanted to ask Grand a few questions he didn't mind. She wondered how long she would have to stay here, since sharing a room with Castiel was awkward, to say the least. Without Brittany's help, the curse could not be lifted. It only weakened over time. If they protect the Sultan from the attacks, the curse will disappear completely, and then Brittany will be completely free. The girl realized that when the time came, she would have to leave the palace, which is why she needed to be ready to protect herself. She didn't want to die in misery. For that, she had to become stronger, but it was important for Brittany to know how long it would take. According to the priest, if she is always with Castiel, it will take about 2 years. Brittany couldn't believe that for such a long time, she would have to share a bed with the Sultan. Grand reassured her that at night she would be a cat again and would live in a small room adjacent to the bedroom. The plan was then for Grand to arrive after Castiel had left for his official residence, with Brittany receiving a broad course in the culture, history, etiquette, and theology of the kingdom. Elliot had to teach the girl a couple of self-defense tricks. Self-defense sounded good to her, because in this life, she had decided that she wanted to be healthy and rich and live to a ripe old age. While the priest was teaching Brittany, people began to whisper behind her back. The maids were interested in what this woman used to melt the Sultan's heart. Rumors were circulating throughout the palace that Brittany was constantly in Castiel's room and was even given a room next door. Aaron asked the girl to ignore them. Usually she would have done so, but not this time. Such words cannot be ignored, Brittany thought. She walked up to the girls who were discussing her and said that she thanked them and that she realized that they were speaking so loudly on purpose so that she could hear. Brittany said that they were right, since she was the closest person to the Sultan, and their words were very sad, because they belittled his good taste. The girls, without fear, called her a vile witch. Taking off her veil, Brittany asked to repeat all this, looking into her face. The girls were speechless from how beautiful the woman was in front of them. Grand learned that the girl had to show her face. He was interested in the details. Brittany was completely calm. She said that there was a small dispute. The priest was not going to blame her for it. The guy didn't see any problem with this, after all. Now the number of people whispering behind her back would decrease. No one would argue with Brittany's beauty. The girl did not want to wear a veil, but she did not know what to do with the stone on her neck, because it could cause strange rumors. The Sultan's cat, Mark, cannot be cut with scissors or a knife, and it also changes shape when transformed, so she has no way to remove it. But Grand can use magic. It was an important item that was best kept to oneself. The priest was surprised that it was bothering Brittany. The stone rang loudly when she walked, and everyone around her turned around, paying attention to her. Grand agreed to remove it, since she was now human, and the mark was not needed. But he had one condition. Having removed the stone, the priest asked to wear the choker without removing it, as it is very important for the goddess Britain. Thinking that Brittany had been studying for too long and would like to take a break, Aaron brought her some tea. The girl really liked the tea. The assistant told her that it was a flower, chamomile tea, which was brought along the new sea route. Chamomile tea, which existed in this world, reminded the girl of the past. She drank it when she was studying for entrance exams and suffered from insomnia. Brittany thanked Aaron for such delicious tea. The assistant was beside herself with happiness. The girl was very embarrassed by such gratitude. She promised to make her the same tea next time. The history of the country was written with love. The Kingdom of Britain has collected many love stories over 1,000 years of existence. The harem could include a wide variety of people, regardless of status and nationality. Either a man or a woman could become a sultan, so the harem changed accordingly. Brittany was surprised that women could have a harem of men. Suddenly, my throat began to burn, and the blood vessels throughout my body seemed to constrict. These were the symptoms of transformation into a cat. The girl didn't feel this way when Castiel was around. With him around, it was as if everything was much calmer. She felt sick and fell down again. This happened almost every time she transformed. The Sultan managed to catch her, and immediately began to find out if everything was okay with her. He was glad that he managed to catch her, asked her to read books in the evening in bed, since it is impossible to predict when the transformation will begin. She clung to him because she was so scared. Castiel chuckled that his cat was such a crybaby. Having seated her on the bed, the Sultan asked how life was in the palace and whether anything was bothering her. Brittany wanted to say a lot, but all she could do was meow. Castiel seemed to read her mind and said that she needed to turn into a human to say something. The Sultan began to prepare for bed. The cat could not calmly watch this, because he was sleeping half naked. Did he really want her not to close her eyes all night? Castiel apologized to the cat for taking her due to his circumstances. At first, the Sultan seemed like a bad, spoiled prince to Brittany, but maybe she was wrong. He could have taken advantage of her weakness, but he didn't. Looking into her eyes, Castiel thought that they needed each other, so they would have to get used to it. He even thought about apologizing to her. The cat started to get nervous. The Sultan picked her up and, smiling, said that he would go crazy from her cuteness. Now she was even more nervous. Lifting her up and touching her forehead, he said that he was very grateful to her, Brittany. This is a greenhouse that the Sultan built especially for the royal family, a very beautiful place that is full of greenery all year round. Aryan brought Brittany here, since she is quite big and you can walk for quite a long time. The cat was a little surprised that this is not just a garden, but a whole greenhouse. However, the girl did not come here just to take a stroll, but to have tea with the most influential person in the country. Aaron noticed that the lady was in a confident mood today. It was a little different from her usual mood. The assistant was pleased with such confidence. Brittany has felt depressed many times when she finds herself in an unfamiliar world, feeling like she is repeating her fate again, just like in her real world. Most likely, her confidence was due to the goddess Britain and her power, as well as her return to human form. Now she was very excited about what the future held for her, and she really wanted to protect the people dear to her. She really didn't want to repeat past mistakes. Brittany warned her assistant that she was not going to become anyone's puppet. She was going to wear only those beautiful things that she chose herself. The girl said that if someone bothered Aaron because of her, she should tell her right away. Even though she was not capable of much now, she would definitely repay her. The assistant was touched. She considered Brittany an amazing person, because others would beat or scold her for mistakes, but she treated her so well. The cat lady realized that the young girl had a very difficult time in the palace, but she still saved her without any reason. Brittany assured the girl that she would not allow anyone to treat her badly, as she was like a member of her family. Aaron began to cry, continuing to thank Brittany. Queen Emma entered the greenhouse. The cat lady couldn't take her eyes off her. The woman noticed and asked what she was looking at, adding that she was so cute in cat form and in human form. Brittany didn't lose her composure, apologized, and said that she had been too distracted by the beauty of Her Majesty, and Emma laughed. The woman said that Brittany's appearance was impressive, and she was sure that her son liked her. The cat lady was confused. She didn't think that the conversation would go in such a direction. In this case, she didn't know what to do. Her Majesty suggested a cup of tea. Brittany started to get nervous again. The queen wondered if there had been any inconveniences during her time living in the palace, but the girl assured her that everything was fine, and she was well looked after. Emma thought that with the arrival of Brittany, the palace became much more comfortable. After this phrase, the girl stopped understanding why she was invited here. Brittany decided to ask first why she was called here, and if they wanted to ask anything. Laughing, Emma called her quite a smart child. But today, Her Majesty just wanted to spend time with her. In her opinion, Castiel used to forbid any strange women to approach his palace. But with the appearance of Brittany, he stopped paying attention to this and generally began to behave differently. The girl said that many people thought that she was part of his harem, and perhaps it would have been better to hide it. She asked the queen again what her true intentions were, since she was probably invited for a reason. Emma realized that this girl was very persistent and did not like to waste time. The woman wanted to ask Brittany to take care of her son, and if she could bear this burden, the queen would put everything on the line and take care of the cat lady for the rest of her life. It will take Castiel several years to fully assume his position as Sultan, and there will be many obstacles along the way. If Brittany can handle this, she will be free to ask Her Majesty for anything she wants. The girl didn't know what to say. Ask for a lot of money, land and a house, or a peaceful old age next to cats. She decided that hiding her feelings in such a situation was not the best idea. Brittany plucked up her courage and asked for her freedom. This request surprised the queen. The girl still insisted on her own. In the event that Castiel became a full-fledged sultan, she wanted to be allowed to do whatever she wanted. This seemed to Emma a very strange desire, because if she were in her place, she would try to maintain contact with the palace at any cost. Brittany thought that Theon probably wasn't the only one who was having a hard time being here. In the end, the queen swore on her honor that she would fulfill her wish, offering to take a short walk and discuss all the details. The girls walked and talked a lot. Brittany noticed how the queen's gaze fell on someone. The stranger laughed sarcastically, saying that she didn't think she would meet the queen here. Emma smiled falsely. She clearly hadn't seen this woman for a long time, and after asking, she decided to take a walk in the same area. The stranger replied that she was in a bad mood and went out for a walk. She thought this decision was the right one, especially judging by the reaction to this meeting. Judging by the conversation, Brittany realized that it was Catherine standing in front of her. Grand had spoken about her earlier and asked her to be especially careful. She didn't seem dangerous to the girl. For her, a dangerous person looked a little different. Hearing Catherine say that beauty loses its value if there is no one to look at it, Emma replied that such greed could only be envied. The queen hoped that one day everyone would understand the art in which the woman was trying to excel. Catherine immediately understood that they were talking about her works, considering that they could hardly be exhibited or shown anywhere, but she did not know that Emma was interested. The woman suggested that they talk about the stranger who stood next to the queen, rather than about such trivial things. It was as if thunder had broken out between the ladies. Emma introduced Brittany as her son's favorite, and supposedly she decided to chat with her a little. Emma realized that Catherine was much more interested in the affairs of the main palace than she thought. With a sly smile, the woman replied to the queen that she was wrong, but the rumors had spread so widely that she could not ignore them. At that moment, Brittany felt like a shrimp stuck between two whales. Emma responded with the same sarcasm that her interlocutor had had many reasons to worry lately, and she expressed hope that Prince Theo would soon get better and that they would be able to return home with their mother. The woman explained that no one was disputing the queen's rule and that she was worried in vain, but thanked him for his kindness and concern for her son. Catherine ended the dialogue first, citing poor health. She left with her maids. This woman, Catherine, was the biological mother of the fourth prince, Theo, and the queen advised to be wary of her. Emma said that this place was quite unpleasant for this woman, but she still continued to come here. The place was unpleasant because the Sultan gave this greenhouse to the queen when she was younger and proposed to her here. When Emma first met the Sultan, she thought he was a simple soldier. He was in uniform and came to the market. The woman was born into a fallen noble family and fell in love with a guy without even knowing his true identity. They were so enchanted by each other that they did not see anything around them. He called Emma his flower and promised that he would never hurt her. He was such a romantic man, only for the queen, sending love letters even from the battlefield. It seemed that the Sultan would never die. But in the end, he left this world and left Emma with a great burden. Noticing that the queen was embarrassed by the fact that she remembered these painful feelings in front of the girl, Brittany reassured her, saying that everyone has such experiences. The woman smiled and said that she was very glad that the girl thought so. Despite all this, Brittany still didn't understand why she should be wary of Catherine. But it was simple. The woman was the mother of Theo, Castiel's sworn doctor. The queen was sure that this family would definitely try to take control of the girl, so she had to become stronger to avoid this. In exchange, Emma promised to give Brittany the position of the most noble person in the palace. After some preparations, they were going to officially declare her the incarnation of the goddess, and then no one would be able to treat her badly. The girl doubted that this was a good idea. Emma admitted that she initially planned to lure her with gold and silver, but then realized that this was a bad idea. Brittany's eyes lit up, because wealth was one of her most important goals. Stroking the girl's hair, the queen promised to keep her promise if she trusted her, because if she wanted to harm her in any way, then two people would come for her soul. Brittany understood that the first person was Castiel, but who was the second then? We were talking about Grand, and he was quite chaotic and would have been more difficult to deal with. It's all because he waited for the girl for a very long time. Brittany became incredibly curious about why Grand had waited for her for so long, but Emma told her to ask him herself. The lady was exhausted. Aaron was afraid for her well-being. It turned out that Grand gave her a lot of tasks. Now she will have to study for a long time. Her assistant was surprised, because today was a day off. Brittany couldn't believe her ears. She didn't know it was a day off. Castiel noticed that the girl was studying even today. Looking at the prince, she did not understand how a man could be so handsome. Noticing this reaction, he said that they had not seen each other for a long time. But she did not have to react like that. Was she really afraid of him? Brittany began to deny that this was not the case. In fact, she was grateful that she could watch this for free. Castiel was surprised that she wasn't afraid of him, because people acted differently towards him. The girl noticed that he came here early today. Could it be that he forgot something? The prince frowned that he was not allowed to come into his own room. Brittany was surprised, because he came at an unusual time, and she thought something was wrong. After clearing his throat a little, Castiel asked if she was free that afternoon. Brittany froze for a second. Gran gave her a lot of work today, asking what was going on. The priest made her read books even on weekends. It was terribly boring, but he kept saying that she should study until she died. With hope in her eyes, she asked the prince to intervene and shorten her school schedule. Gently taking Brittany's hand, Castiel said he had a better idea, suggesting that they escape the palace together today. Capital of the Eastern Kingdom. It was very different from the scenery she had seen as a cat. The girl was surprised to see the sea that separated the continents from each other. Brittany asked the prince how long it would take to get to the other side. He said that it was about an hour by ship. On the other side, you could find a road to the west. The atmosphere there was very different from theirs, so he tried to be careful when visiting other countries for the purpose of exchange. Again, the girl was thinking about something else, because usually Castiel groaned like a grandfather, but now he looked like a real prince. She thought it was a good idea to go with the Sultan. Brittany felt a little freer. The guy noticed that she was in a good mood. This was indeed the case, since it was difficult to adapt to life in the palace. It was a bit stuffy there. Hearing this, Castiel concluded that he had not paid the girl due attention. Noticing his outfit, she said that something was wrong with him. The prince looked too stylish, despite the fact that they were going into the city incognito. Brittany thought that the prince had a poor understanding of the outside world and didn't even realize how much attention he would attract. She thought she should do something about his hair first. The girl asked him to tilt his head down. If he wants to pass for a commoner, he should at least look modest. Quite suddenly, Brittany asked the prince to close his eyes for a second. He reassured himself that there was no need to panic and obeyed her. The atmosphere between them was too excited. Castiel felt how close the girl was to him. It felt like their lips were about to touch. He opened his eyes suddenly as his head began to shake. With a smile on her face, Brittany said it would be better this way. Putting a hood on him, the girl said that it would be even better this way. Before Castiel could express his emotions, they arrived. Brittany froze. This place seemed very familiar to her. The prince was unpleasantly surprised that she had already been here. The girl immediately explained that she had hidden here when she was in the form of a cat, because just a couple of weeks ago she had been a stray animal. Life seemed so unpredictable to her, as she was now on a secret journey with the prince. Castiel had never been a cat, but he found it strange to see the same place in different forms. For a second, Brittany imagined the prince in cat form. She even became interested in asking the priest to experiment, but Castiel interrupted her and said that it was time for them to go. One of the saleswomen was shouting to the whole market that they sell almost anything, high quality, low prices. You just have to come up and take a look. The girl noticed that more and more people were gathering. She even noticed one counter with all sorts of trinkets. The seller immediately told her that in front of her was a nazer, an amulet against the evil eye, a very popular product lately, protecting against failures and troubles. Brittany was glad that in this world, they also sell some kind of protective amulets, and decided to buy one as a gift. This would be the first purchase in this world. She froze for a moment. I couldn't even imagine how much she needed to pay, because she only studied etiquette and history. The prince appeared out of nowhere, explaining that the young lady had not yet figured out the local pricing system, and handed the vendor a coin. She started screaming that she needed personal experience and wanted to do it herself, but Castiel pretended not to hear anything. The prince said that it was too heavy and he would carry it himself, but the girl did not understand what he was talking about. Her purse weighed more than this bag. She started to catch up with him so that he would explain this whole situation to her, but the guy ignored her. Brittany thought something special would happen since they came here incognito, but so far there was nothing interesting. They only asked what goods were in demand and what were the prices. But she was still happy because it was the first time she had gone out somewhere to shop, deciding to look around a bit. Before she could understand what had happened, some man very sharply pushed the girl right in the shoulder. Brittany almost fell over, not understanding why she had to push like that. It's good that I caught Castiel in time. He asked her if she was okay. The girl was fine. The prince said that there was a big crowd here, asking her not to get lost. She didn't understand why there were so many people here. He told her that it would be dangerous if they separated, asking her to move closer. The only thing in danger now was her heart. It looked like they were hugging. Today was the main trading day, so there were so many people. Castiel said it was time to leave. To some extent, Brittany was even offended that the prince did not care about their closeness. Touching her hand, he said that it was time to move on. but it seemed that the girl was nervous, not knowing what to do with it. Lanterns were burning all around, creating a romantic atmosphere. Castiel looked like he was thinking about something. Aaron was incredibly happy with her gift in the form of a beautiful bracelet that reminded her of the color of Lady Brittany's eyes. The girl still wanted to know what happened yesterday. Embarrassed, the lady replied that it was nothing special, that she and the prince had just taken a short walk. Aaron was outraged that Brittany was saying this so easily, since it was her first date with Castiel. Clearing her throat, she said that it was not a date, but just a secret excursion. But her assistant still did not understand. If the prince wanted to come to the city secretly, then why did he take Brittany with him? For a moment, she remembered those warm embraces that had carefully enveloped her. It felt like the girl could still feel them. Aaron noticed that the lady's face now resembled a red-hot piece of iron. The assistant suggested canceling the fencing practice, but Brittany believed that it was unmissable and that they should go already. She didn't think she would need self-defense techniques when she had the power of a goddess. But the girl didn't want information about her to spread. It would be better to protect yourself in case of an unforeseen situation while there is an opportunity to learn for free. Brittany didn't know who would teach her fencing. She had an image of some stern man in her head. Irene introduced her to the young teacher, adding that he was kind and would teach her everything she needed. The fencing teacher turned out to be Aaron's brother, and he was the one the lady least wanted to see. She found it funny that the guy couldn't even move next to the girl. She decided to play a little joke on him by offering to shake his hand to celebrate their acquaintance. Brittany squeezed his hand so hard that he cried out in pain, grinning. She said that it was time to start the lesson. This situation greatly amused the lady. An hour later, the guy said he would bring some water, leaving Brittany to rest. She realized that her appearance stood out enough that even this guy reacted that way. For a second, she wondered what she was even doing. The only person she wanted to make fun of like that was Castiel. The only thing she didn't understand was why the prince started to react so calmly. It would have been normal if he had been at least a little embarrassed. The girl didn't like it, so she tried to do everything several times. She had originally planned to avoid him, but now she realized that it bothered her. Brittany grabbed the sword, hoping to get rid of her chaotic thoughts. Swinging a sword alone was quite unusual. Having lost control of herself, the sword almost fell out of her hands, but Theo arrived in time and intercepted it. Staring at the prince, the girl said his name in surprise. But Theo was no less surprised than she was, since they were not acquainted. Brittany apologized for not being able to stop in time and not noticing him. The prince thought that the girl was an unusual person, since only people connected with the government came to this place. Theo decided to give the girl a little advice, since beginners usually lost concentration and dropped the sword. Even a wooden sword could seriously injure, so she should be more careful. Having received thanks for his advice, the prince smiled, saying that he was glad to help. Feeling her gaze on him, the guy smiled and asked if he had something on his face for the girl to be looking at him like that. Rather than say he was handsome, Brittany replied that it was just not every day that she got the chance to meet Prince Theo in person. She asked if she could stay here if it was such an important place. The prince chuckled and said that his brother would definitely be angry if he found out about this, so he suggested keeping it a secret. Brittany didn't think it was a good idea to meet Castiel here. It was better not to come between the enemy brothers, so she decided to tactfully leave. It was very strange for Theo that they saw each other for the first time. For some reason, her atmosphere was very frightening. She even began to doubt that this was the same person she had seen earlier. Finally, Brother Aaron appeared with a jug of water, asking the prince what he was doing there. Smiling, Theo replied that he was passing by and wanted to return the lady's wooden sword, which she almost dropped. Brittany asked her teacher to finish for today. The prince laughed, indicating that the girl no longer wanted to train. Theo was very interested that he personally met the very girl from the rumors, his brother's favorite. He ordered his servant to check her background and not miss the slightest detail. The prince realized that things would only get more fun in the future. Castiel's face turned angry, and he ordered the boy to repeat who Lady Brittany had just met. The prince asked how far the investigation into the capital's black market had progressed, and whether the identity of those behind the incident last time had been established. There were only suspicions, but no clear material evidence had been found yet. Everything was so extensive that it is difficult to find a single accounting book. Castiel needed a clear clue that would help him destroy Katrina. To achieve this, the first priority was to drive out those behind the illegal trade and tax embezzlement that flourished in the capital. The prince ordered that they make sure she was found, as evidence would surface if they tracked the volume and quantity of weapons being sold on the black market. The knight reported that Prince Theo visited the training camp today. Castiel found his brother very annoying, especially when he meddled in his affairs. The knight immediately began to apologize for leaving Brittany alone with this guy, promising that he would be more careful from now on, and nothing like this would happen again. Castiel still didn't understand why his brother did it. He might not be very pleased to approach the girl, but he dared to set foot on the territory of the training camp, where outsiders are not allowed to enter. He must have approached Brittany to be used for political purposes. But what if not? For some time now, Castiel had been feeling anxious and impatient whenever he didn't see her in front of him, even when he fell asleep at night. Brittany slept in the form of a small kitten, and the prince was afraid that one day she would disappear like a mirage. Emotions only harmed him. He thought that it would not help him rule the kingdom. It was fun to feel the awkward feeling of love. Now everything was different. Castiel knew that very well. He thought about how stupid it was to indulge in such careless feelings. The prince did not know what he should call this unpleasant feeling that seemed impossible to grasp. For today, Castiel finished negotiations. He needed to see Brittany. With that in mind, it was time to take a tour of a city located near the capital. The city tour was intended to unite the nobles and inspire loyalty to the ruling family. Although this was one of the main tasks that the governor of the capital had to perform, Brittany was very happy to see Castiel, and that he came early. He felt suffocated when he saw this girl. The prince loved the existence of this girl so much that he could not understand what was happening to him. Seeing his worried look, she touched him and asked if he was in any pain. Taking his face away from her hand, Castiel said he was okay. He didn't know what to do now. Since the last time they went to the market together, everything had been mixed up in his head. At first, the prince thought it was because of Brittany, who felt disappointed, unknown actions. Then he realized that it was a lot of fun to walk around the market with someone, buy sandwiches, and look at the cheap food. When they walked together, he was worried that the girl might fall, that someone might hurt her. Coincidentally, Castiel discovered that his heart could beat that fast. Eventually, he had to admit it. The fact that Brittany is there for him not only to satisfy his needs, but also to fulfill his personal desires. The girl started screaming to get his attention. She wanted to know what had happened that he was so strange. She didn't understand why he sighed like that when he looked at her. The prince said that starting tomorrow, he would leave for some time to visit cities near the capital. He felt very sorry that he was leaving her alone. In his defense, Castiel said that he had known about this for about a week, or to be precise, 5 days. Brittany really wanted to go with him, but it was impossible. The condition of her trip with the prince was that she had to be in the form of a cat the whole time, which she hated the most. Castiel promised to do his best to make sure there were no inconveniences, but she should be patient. And besides, due to the trip, all classes were canceled. Still, Brittany expressed her displeasure that she was told about the trip just the day before it happened. With a smile on her face, she said that, even for a prince, this was too much. Castiel was going to allow himself to hug the girl. He wanted to let his body move at the will of whatever thoughts came into his head. While he wondered if she might hate him, he worried that he might leave her. Still, he decided not to take her with him, promising to return soon. This trip was an opportunity to face the feeling he had for Brittany. In the meantime, he hoped that nothing would happen to her. Theo was glad that the flowers grew well, as strange as it seemed. With their help, he will also be able to prepare a large amount of poison. It couldn't be just beauty. He was pleased to see them bloom, only to be forgotten by damn time. But poisonous plants had many uses, as a medicine that heals people, and as a deadly drug that instantly takes life. The servant greeted Prince Theo. Such a sudden visit frightened the prince. He repeatedly told him not to show such carelessness, or the servant would die. The servant made sure that there was not a soul around. She asked for forgiveness for having failed the task. She came to report what Theo had asked her to investigate. She was sorry to say it, but she could find absolutely nothing about Brittany. All circumstances, including age, place of birth, and social status, were mysterious. She also could not understand the Sultan's sudden departure from the palace. The truth was that one day, Brittany suddenly showed up at Prince Castiel's palace, which was apparently a move on his part, and no investigation was conducted before or after. Also, there was news that Castiel's knights were moving separately. It seems they were scouting the market. Brother Theo was very smart. He wanted to hug this little brother. As his little brother, he had to give some task. The investigation also revealed nothing about the people who were recently fired from the palace. In that case, Theo ordered the servant to kill them all. In his opinion, it was a great plan, because what rumors would spread after the people his brother had kicked out died horrible deaths. The prince really wanted to do it. Theo ordered the servant to go back and do his business. His gaze fell on the flowers. Now that he thought about it, he wondered if that cat was okay. These flowers were not harmful to humans. Theo was very surprised that the cat bit something that was almost like poison. He decided that if he saw her later, he should tell her not to go there. The prince shouldn't have continued to give the cat these flowers, but for some reason he couldn't stop thinking about it, because this wasn't just someone else's cat. It was his brother's cat. Moreover, if this was the same cat from the prophecy, then he had to destroy it. In his heart, he didn't want to harm this kitten. He just wanted to take her. Theo couldn't understand why these useless feelings only grew stronger within him. As soon as he began to think about this, he noticed something else. His brother Castiel never showed any interest in the opposite sex. But when a woman named Brittany appeared out of nowhere, she turned out to be the one the prince was in love with. Theo wondered what kind of expression his brother would make if he lost the girl. It seemed funny to him to imagine his little brother with eyes full of grief and pain. Brittany definitely felt like something was going to happen after this day. Didn't anyone else notice the suspicious silence? Grand asked if he understood correctly that she meant Prince Theo. The girl was interested to know what kind of person he was. Besides the fact that he was the fourth prince of the kingdom, she wanted to get to know him better. And not just that. Catherine came from the richest family on the continent, and Theo was her only child. The prince had a very attractive appearance and was extremely kind to women. To the girls in the palace, he was known as the prince on a white horse. In terms of appearance and personality, he was more popular than Castiel. Moreover, he followed in his mother's footsteps by being responsible for sponsoring orphanages and participating in various relief efforts. The prince often said that he was simply returning wealth to the city. Brittany wondered if he was such a good man. Then should she be careful? Grand reiterated that this is exactly the image Prince Theo displays. Because if you look at his actions, he is a very dangerous person. The heirs that are currently left in the kingdom are two: the second prince, the son of the current sultan, and the fourth prince, the son of Catherine, which means that if Castiel disappears, Theo will become the next sultan. For this reason, Queen Emma will continue to be vigilant against Theo's forces, because even she doesn't know what might happen. That's why Brittany asked to keep a closer eye on Prince Theo. Things like this made her feel uneasy when she was alone. She wished Castiel was here at a time like this. The prince was absent only a few days. The cat already felt lonely. She hated seeing an empty bed in the morning. She had feelings similar to falling in love. She admitted that they definitely existed. If she dipped into them for even a second, Brittany felt her heart tap dancing. She thought it was very dangerous for her, and made her even more nervous. She wanted these teachings to stop. Opening her eyes, she noticed someone's hands in front of her. They were the maids who took care of Brittany while Aaron was away, and they scared her a lot. They wanted to touch the cat until Aaron showed up, but knowing the girl's character, she could start a fight for any slightest touch to the animal. The girls decided to touch the cat just a little bit, and if she didn't like it, they would immediately stop doing it. Brittany realized that something she didn't want was about to happen, so she jumped out of her seat. It turned out that she did not want to run away at all, but on the contrary, she jumped onto the lap of one of the maids. The girl was going to touch this beautiful animal for a minute. Things have really changed. In the past, there were people who thought Brittany was just a cat who couldn't talk, and were indifferent to her. Out of nowhere, Aaron appeared. The girl was very unhappy with what was happening. The maids immediately began to justify themselves by saying that the cat herself asked them for affection. In order not to aggravate the situation, they said goodbye to Aaron and left. Feeling guilty, the girl leaned over the cat and began to ask her forgiveness for allowing such a situation to happen. Brittany seemed cute to Aaron when she was jealous because she played with others. Looking into the eyes of this beautiful creature, the girl asked whether she was in the form of a goddess or Brittany. Could she be her friend? The cat never thought she could hear something like this from Aaron. Although the girl was still young, she was a servant. No one in the palace could openly enjoy their time. The cat hugged the girl because it was she who had approached her from the very beginning. She was her best friend. Out of happiness, Aaron ran to the library to bring Brittany the book she had talked about earlier. The library was quite quiet and calm. The cat came here to borrow a book that Grand recommended to her last time. The books were old, so we had to go to a storage facility, not the main library. Seeing that Aaron was late, Brittany thought about the book the priest had recommended. That was quite embarrassing. Someone grabbed her from behind and said that a cat couldn't be in a place like that. It was Theo's voice. Brittany didn't like how he always appeared out of nowhere. The prince apologized for spoiling her mood, suggesting that he had surprised the girl too much. He gently stroked her neck, and it made her purr, even though she knew she shouldn't. There was no denying that Theo had amazing cat skills. He asked with a smile if she felt any better. But this prince was driving Brittany crazy. The guy assumed that she was not alone here, since the animal could not have come to this place. The sight of the cat seemed very helpless to him. No matter whether there was a guard here, being in this place was an extremely dangerous occupation. Aaron's thoughts were filled with the feeling that she had a mission to save the book. Brittany was very curious about what Prince Theo was thinking. He looked very angry, and she didn't know if he was okay. Looking at the cat, he said out loud that if it were him, he would order the cat that belongs to his brother. But this is not the case at all. Rather, it was his brother's favorite cat. So Castiel had some kind of control over her. Theo wanted her on his side. Brittany didn't expect to hear such a confession. Seeing her look, he laughed, saying that he was joking. Theo immediately realized that he had stunned her again. It was obvious to Brittany that his words were not a joke at all, but she didn't understand why he had such a surprised look on his face. Looking at the cat, the prince admitted that these feelings calm him down. It's just that it's rare to be near her in this royal palace. Looking at him deeply, he asked her to meet again if they were destined to meet in the next life. After these words, Theo gently touched his lips to Brittany's. She started meowing loudly to let him know that he was doing something wrong. Her head suddenly began to hurt. The pain was terribly unbearable. Moments with Castiel came back to her mind. The prince did not tell her, but many were gossiping behind her back. He asked her to leave everything to him and go. He was not going to give up. When she woke up, the girl realized that she had been able to turn into a human after kissing Theo. Wasn't Castiel the only one who could trigger the transformation? That time she was looking for a book in the library, and by an unfortunate accident, she came across Theo. After his kiss, Brittany's body was seized by hellish pain. Castiel's kiss was strange, yet so different. Everything was like a fog, and yet she felt an unusual energy in her body. Brittany knew that if anyone found out that she could turn from kissing other people, there would be political strife. This could be a huge blow to Castiel's reputation, considering that the magical cat of the prophecy is said to choose a man worthy of the throne. The transformation with the help of a kiss can rightly be regarded as an approval of Theo's candidacy. The prince saw that the cat had already woken up, or should he call her Brittany? The prince sneered. By the way, he wanted her to address him by name. Before the girl was going to explain everything to him, she wanted to clarify something. Firstly, she was waiting for an apology for the sudden kiss because she did not want it. Human or animal, it didn't matter. There was no point in approaching her with kisses without permission. Kneeling down, Theo apologized for his rudeness, but he became interested in whether she really needed someone's kiss for her transformation. If there was one thing Brittany didn't know, it was that, unfortunately, she couldn't answer his curiosity. Theo realized that this was the reason why his brother kept the girl with him. He had long since begun to suspect that there was a limit to her human form. Otherwise, why would she turn into a cat again? The girl didn't know what to do if he started to intimidate her with this. To be honest, the prince was glad that Brittany appeared before him as a human. He considered it a great honor. The girl already thought that Theo would use this information against her. Could she have been wrong? She was going to dig deeper to find out. The only thing that could be said was that at the moment, the guy didn't look like a bad guy. Brittany decided to ask the prince not to reveal her secret. Before she had time to voice her request, the servant informed her that Theo's mother, Catherine, had come to see him. The boy said that he was changing clothes, asking his mother to wait a little. In a few seconds he hid the girl. Catherine immediately came in with the presentation that it was very rude of the son to hopelessly forget about his bored mother. The prince apologized, citing a lack of time, but the woman did not listen to him, paying attention to his clothes. She knew perfectly well that her son was not one of those who practiced daytime sleep, having guessed that he had let a woman into his chambers, and in broad daylight at that. Theo recalled his mother's words when she said that she didn't care what her son did. Catherine waited for an explanation, believing that the prince had no time to fool around, but it was time to get into a serious relationship. She noticed that Theo had something he really wanted to tell his mother. Unfortunately, Brittany was very hard of hearing in the closet and couldn't make out what they were saying. At that moment, she wished they would stand closer or speak a little louder. There was a high probability that the information being discussed was secret, but there was no way she could get out of that closet. Catherine was very pleased to hear from her son that the cargo would arrive in 10 days, but she still thought that it was not worth keeping them waiting too long. The prince raised his finger to his lips, indicating that it was time to interrupt the conversation, because even the walls had ears. With a displeased face, the woman asked her son who he was trying to deceive. She knew that Theo had even gotten rid of her comrades. As she headed for the exit, she told him that she expected only good news from him, otherwise he might not show up. Brittany noticed Catherine walking in her direction, her heart pounding with fear and despair. The doors swung open sharply. The girl grabbed her head with her hands, trying to protect herself. Theo helped her out, asking if she was okay. Brittany admitted that she was afraid of dark, tight spaces. The prince apologized for his mother's sudden appearance, and the girl exhaled, realizing that he hadn't even realized that she had been eavesdropping. Still, it was dangerous to stay in his room. Briotany thanked the prince, but said that it was time for her to go. Theo tried to insist that she should rest even more. The girl asked him for a favor, so that he would keep a secret that she was with him and that she could transform. Brittany clasped her hands tightly in excitement. With a smirk, Theo asked why she was asking him about this. Was she worried that Castiel might get angry? But the girl did not consider him to be that kind of person, which could not be said about Theo. She admitted that she doesn't want to cause problems because she is from a prophecy. After all, if it turns out that there are two of those whose kiss helped her turn, then she will find herself involved in a huge scandal. Kissing Brittany's hand, Theo said that if that was her wish, then so be it. Returning to the room, the girl noticed Aaron in tears. She decided that the cat was lost. The maid was so worried that the lady had been kidnapped that she couldn't even imagine what she would have done if the cat hadn't returned. Brittany wondered if she should tell Aaron that she had turned into a human. If she told her, that information would definitely reach Castiel, and the two of them weren't exactly close enough to begin with, and she didn't want to make things worse. Anyway, she and Theo kissed. What else could she say? The cat was fast asleep when someone stroked her, telling her to wake up. Castiel, whom they had not seen for a long time, sat in front of her. The prince wanted to know how she was doing. Brittany couldn't believe her eyes that he was back. Taking the cat's bedding, the prince noticed that it was his clothes. Her fur stood on end. She didn't think Castiel would catch her doing this. Brittany herself asked Aaron to get the prince's clothes, but if she had known that he was coming tonight, she would have cleaned everything. Gently hugging the cat to his chest, Castiel said that he missed her very much. She thought the guy would be angry, but he was acting too nice. When she didn't respond, the prince apologized, saying he was just very happy to see her. And in fact, Brittany was also very happy to see her. To be honest, she missed him even more than he did. In her cat form, she couldn't speak, so she wondered if she should tell him later that she was very happy too. The prince wanted to see her, so he came as quickly as he could. There was so much work to do that Castiel had to go straight to the official residence. So when he finished, he promised to have dinner with Brittany. The prince thought that he would not have time to look here later. He asked the cat if she could take her human form. Without waiting for an answer, Castiel leaned low towards her. He touched the cat with his lips, and she reciprocated. Realizing that she had transformed, the prince left. Brittany crawled out from under the covers to find the room empty. She started screaming that he couldn't just leave after saying whatever he wanted, because she had been through so much while he was gone. After a few minutes of hysteria, the girl realized that she only thought that he would wait for her. The reason Brittany was acting strange was because they hadn't had dinner together in too long. After getting ready, the girl realized that she looked much better today. She really liked it. Brittany hoped it wasn't the feeling she thought it was. The maid reported that things had arrived from Silent, offering to take them to the chambers. Aaron explained that Silent was a place where clothes were made only for members of the royal family or high-ranking nobility who lived in the palace. There were also many famous shops outside the palace, but these ones lived right in the palace. Most of the nobles preferred clothes from Silent. Aaron heard that there are beautiful fabrics there that you can't buy for money, as well as several famous designers. The girl was delighted that her new summer dress had arrived, and she was so eager to pick it up. Since summer is coming, Aaron ordered several types of fabric and decorations. There were an incredible amount of them. Brittany didn't see the point in giving her something like that, since she wasn't of royal blood, much less new. The maid explained that this was Castiel's request, and the Sultan had given special permission. She didn't know if it was okay to take advantage of their favor like this. Having finished trying on the clothes, Grand entered the room. For some reason, it seemed to him that Brittany's thoughts were on something completely different today. The priest asked what she was so worried about. She came up with the first thing that came to her mind, saying about the veil that she would no longer wear it within the palace. Otherwise, she decided that it would be better to create more noise in the palace now. Grand laughed, saying that Castiel had already kicked out everyone who might offend or look at Brittany in the wrong way. Jumping up from her seat, she asked if he really wanted to say that he had kicked them all out because of her. Grand explained that it was because the girl was a priority for the prince. The girl realized that she had not paid enough attention to the prince until recently, because she planned to leave without any regrets. Of course, she believed that he thought of her only in that way. Brittany was confused and now didn't know what to do. She really didn't know what the right thing to do was. The girl realized that she had gone crazy, and she really had gone crazy. Grand asked if she was okay, and if she didn't want to talk, then there was no need to do so. Brittany said she felt spiritual powers from the goddess, the same thing that happened on the night His Majesty was crowned. It was a very interesting story. The fountain, which was named after the goddess, was built at the same time as the palace. In fact, it is the most ordinary fountain, but if you activate it, you can get holy water, which contains powers. That's why she was so attached to the source. Now that they were talking about such an important matter, Grand felt a little sad. The priest had so many suspicious ideas that Brittany didn't even know what to believe. The girl said that she had not been sitting idle all this time, hinting that it was time to start training. Grand asked her what exactly she would like to start with. These were definitely sacred powers. She wanted to learn how to use the powers of the goddess. Brittany couldn't just sit and wait for someone to come to her aid, so she was going to rely on herself. Having heard everything that was needed, Grand decided to increase the number of classes. Aaron brought Brittany to one of His Majesty's secret places, his personal library. She felt uneasy, thinking that it was a small library, since there was no one in it. After giving the lady a chance to look around, Aaron said that she would wait for her at the exit. Brittany had little time before he returned, so she decided to look for what she needed. Her gaze fell on a book that stood out, called Empire. There were some scribbles inside. After a few seconds, she realized that it was not scribbles, but a child's handwriting. Brittany thought that Castiel might have written this as a child. She laughed out loud because she found what she wrote cute. Behind her, a menacing voice asked what she was looking at. Gently hugging the girl, the prince said that it was dangerous and she could get hurt. Brittany breathed a sigh of relief when she realized it was Castiel. Seeing his expression, this situation became very risky. Noticing his bare chest, she thought that at this rate she would soon definitely go crazy. Frightened, the prince asked if she was hurt, but the girl replied that she was fine and he could let her go. At that moment, her face was incredibly burning. Picking up the book Brittany was reading, the prince said that it was exactly what he was looking for. It turned out that he had read it when he was a child, but had not seen it for a long time, and had even managed to miss it. As a child, Castiel's writing was very crooked, and his teachers scolded him until they tried to correct it. He told the girl that princes receive all types of education from childhood. Brittany was amazed that he had read this book when he was 10 years old, because the book was the same thickness as a university book. Castiel chuckled and said that it was smaller than the other princes. The boy's mother didn't force him to study a lot, but she was more strict in other things. The queen was extremely interested in her son's training in martial arts and participation in fights. Emma said that you can't be a good commander-in-chief using only your head. Brittany realized that this beautiful body was made for exactly this. Without a doubt, the man had to have a good physique. Castiel had been staring at the girl the whole time, and she had just realized it. He noticed that it was her first time wearing this dress. The embroidery was quite unusual, indicating that it was a dress from abroad. The girl said that she took this dress in silent, and since it was already ready, she wanted to wear it. The dress was as beautiful as her eyes, the prince complimented. He really liked it. To change the subject, which was awkward for her, Brittany suggested going out to eat together. Castiel didn't mind, but there seemed to be one problem. The prince had turned the girl back into her human form too early this morning, so perhaps he didn't have much time left for a quiet dinner. Castiel noticed the disappointment in her eyes. Brittany laughed, saying that Aaron had told her that they were serving really good fish today, but they had prepared something for the cats too, just in case. The prince asked the girl to stop and gently took her face. He did it in order to kiss her. Castiel asked Brittany to take her time, as there was enough food on the table. She didn't like that he was asking her to restrain herself when there was so much food in front of her. Her entire past life was spent studying and working part-time, and in the end, she died alone. It was her first kiss. Even if they kissed every morning, this kiss was different. Brittany didn't know why Castiel kissed her. Having drunk a glass of wine in one gulp, she asked for more. The prince assumed that she didn't like something. She wanted to talk about the kiss, but she never dared. In principle, this was not a problem, because Castiel was handsome and had a beautiful body. It irritated her that he took her first kiss, while smiling so relaxedly. Without finishing her next glass of wine, Brittany collapsed, exhausted. The servant asked if he should take her to the prince's room, but he answered no. "Because I was going to do it myself." The girl suddenly woke up and started screaming for him to return her first kiss. Castiel froze in bewilderment. The doctor said that Brittany's body produces few enzymes that break down alcohol, which is why she gets drunk so quickly. The girl could not believe these words, because in her past life, she calmly drank 2 bottles of strong drink. The prince asked how she felt. Brittany's whole body was burning, but it was probably just a slight fever. Castiel touched her forehead and said it was hot. It was too much for a normal hangover. Finding the prince too close to her, the girl pulled away, saying that she was perfectly fine. Almost crying, she said that she was not sick because of alcohol. The prince found this spectacle rather sweet. He couldn't say for sure, but it seemed like everything was overlapping, and Castiel was worried that something had happened. He gently wiped Brittany's face with a towel soaked in cold water. The girl asked why he was smiling. It made her nervous. It turned out that Castiel had never seen her like this before. This is exactly what he found funny. He decided to tease Brittany a little more and move closer. He wanted to help her wipe her wet face and then kiss her eyes and blushing cheeks. But he had to be patient. Otherwise, the prince will scare his cat. Brittany asked Castiel not to play tricks on her like that. He could no longer restrain himself from pretending that he simply cared. The prince could not understand why, when he was near this girl, he became a completely different person. He felt as if something else was churning in his stomach. Castiel loved Brittany even more than he thought. The girl asked why he was looking at her like that, but remained silent. Since he had to keep his feelings a secret, he couldn't think of anything better to do than just leave, asking her to call a doctor immediately if the fever rose again. As they parted, the prince took her hand and kissed it tenderly, promising Brittany that he would try to return as soon as possible. Castiel worked so hard, but there was still so much to do, he couldn't even dream of rest. His knight came to tell him that his master needed to see something in person. An arrowhead was found at the scene. It was made of poison-resistant material. The tip was quite long and sharp. The arrow appeared to be intended to poison, rather than kill. The knight checked everything. The poison was made from a plant. The plant was called aconite. It seems like just this one word can make you feel sick. This was a great shame for the prince, since if an arrow had hit him, it would have meant instant death. Castiel asked the knight again if the poison was made from a flower. That's right, not from reptiles or snakes, but from a difficult-to-grow plant. The prince thought for a moment. He decided to find the source, but first he needed to find out if anyone had survived. Most of the attackers committed suicide. Perhaps he was a swordsman, but was saved by poison. Castiel clutched the wound, feeling very sick. From his compression, the wound began to bleed. He ordered the knight to bring him a change of clothes. The prince thought that when Brittany saw his scars all over his body, she would definitely be scared. Because he will worry, Castiel found the situation very cute and funny. The prince was going to interrogate the survivors personally, so he ordered the knight to bring a priest to heal them. Normally, Castiel would have fixed everything the way it was supposed to, but as Brittany continued to be put in danger, her situation worsened. He had to protect the girl at any cost. The prince decided that this time they would definitely find the culprit. Theo was informed that his brother had returned safe and sound. He immediately realized that his relative was up to his old tricks. Theo found it amusing that Castiel always lost, but never learned anything. The prince was interested in whether there was any news from the guild. He was informed that there had recently been a dispute over the rights to black market goods. The prince continued to have fun, not even thinking about who would be next on the list. He believed that the higher the reputation, the more people would know about them, and he would become even more powerful. The servant also reported that 5 days later, it became known that the ship had docked at the port of Vinta. Theo was glad that he could finally give it to his mother. Sometimes the prince behaved like a very good and obedient son. Mother always told Theo that he must become a sultan at any cost, because that was the only way to survive in the palace. Survive and then take revenge. Throughout his childhood, he was taught that he should not try, but should fight. His mother cursed the kingdom that had made her so unhappy. At times, Theo felt sorry for his mother. Love was a terrible thing, and what was even sadder was when love was not reciprocated. He thought he would never understand it. For the first time in his life, the prince became so greedy. He even thought that he should have taken the girl back then. It was awkward to keep these feelings in his heart when this girl belonged to his brother. It was strange, but Theo felt pretty good. Even if Brittany wasn't the real cat from the prophecy, he wouldn't care if she came to him on her own. Theo believed that this could be changed at any moment. The prince felt sorry for his brother that the arrow had not hit him, because now he would have to fight for his beloved so that she would not be taken away. Castiel was so cold to Brittany, and then he warmed up. After their trip to the market together, he distanced himself from her. Now, after his absence, the prince acted as if he had decided to give her love again. After such thoughts, the girl began to convince herself that she was a cat, and it was obvious that Castiel should take care of her. Brittany didn't know what was happening to her. She was just trying to suppress the feeling that resembled affection. After all, if the prince is persistent, it will become difficult for her to restrain herself. Suddenly, Castiel came up from behind and grabbed the cat. He asked her what was bothering her. Climbing onto his shoulder, Brittany had no intention of sharing her thoughts and experiences. When the cat was in a comfortable place for her, the prince said that he had something. Hearing the words about the gift, the cat immediately jumped off Castiel's head. He barely managed to catch her. He came to tell her that she was spending too much time in the palace. The prince believed that Brittany should spend more time enjoying the outdoors. If she had no objections, Castiel suggested that they go for a walk together tomorrow. It was clear from the cat's expression that she agreed. The next day, the prince gently pressed the cat to his chest, hoping that she would enjoy this walk. Brittany frowned, as if to warn him that she was still angry and wasn't going to be friendly just because they were here. Finally, she saw the landscape around her. The nature in this place was incredibly beautiful. It was the first time in her life that Brittany had seen such a stunning landscape. She thanked Castiel with her whole body for bringing her here. A little embarrassed, the prince replied that there was nothing special about it. The cat noticed that the prince had some kind of wound, and that it hurt him to move his hand. Ignoring his pleas not to go there, she used her claws to climb straight onto his chest. After taking Castiel's shirt off, Brittany noticed that his arm had an odd color, and there was almost no healthy spot on it. He tried to calm her down, saying that the wound was so big because of the poison, but there were no bruises, so there was nothing to worry about. The cat wanted to know when it happened. Was it really after the trip? She was sure he had received treatment when he returned, but the poison had spread so far that he must be in a lot of pain. Brittany couldn't understand how the prince could remain so calm, despite being so injured. Even though she was so close to him, she still couldn't believe that she hadn't noticed anything. The cat blamed herself, calling herself stupid. Seeing tears on her face, Castiel said that if he had known that this would happen, he would have told her everything much earlier. The prince began to calm her down, repeating that his body was resistant to most poisons. Still, that place hurt. Besides, Castiel didn't want Brittany to worry. He was only here because of her. If you think about it, the prince had periodic attacks. After all, she could have helped him before, and thought that she could do the same now. But the cat didn't know whether her power worked on curses. If she had known this would happen, she would have trained much harder. Although, the girl learned the basics to use the power of the goddess of Britain. This strength came from faith and hope. Brittany began to think that she might be able to ease the prince's pain. In any case, she had nothing to lose. Although, it was because of Castiel that she had been sad lately. But this guy was her butler and friend. Brittany buried her face in his hand, hoping it would stop hurting. There was a flash of bright purple light for a moment. Castiel couldn't believe it, but the pain was completely gone. The cat was incredibly happy that she had succeeded after all. It was incredible. The arrow wound healed completely. At that moment, Brittany felt like a real genius. Castiel thanked his goddess of luck tenderly. It seems she likes this guy a lot more than she thought. The girl was completely confused. She had never fallen in love before, and the prince himself found himself in this initial role. Castiel was her first love. In fairy tales, it seemed incredibly romantic. But in reality, Brittany turned out to be ballast. For a second, she wondered if the prince felt the same way. Would they be able to be together then? According to their law, Castiel can have multiple girlfriends. If the Sultan wanted, he could create a whole harem. But Brittany, who came from the modern world, would never accept it. In any case, she could only hope for a light romantic adventure. What's worse, the girl didn't know what would happen with her plan to help Castiel and Emma, and then quickly disappear from the palace. Nothing had happened yet, but Brittany was already worried. Someone knocked on her door, apologizing in advance for the disturbance. It was none other than Grand. It turned out that the priest felt the power of the goddess at dawn. Brittany told him that Castiel had a serious wound and she healed it, that's all. Grand was extremely surprised, because the poison was so strong that even he had difficulty treating it. The girl referred to the fact that she simply did as the goddess Britain taught her in her dream. The priest reminded that the girl was chosen by the goddess. However, she has poor control over her power. The magic she used a few hours ago was excessive. Brittany had no idea about this. It was all because she still hadn't learned how to handle it properly. Just being near Castiel, the girl spent a lot of energy. If not for the power of the goddess, then everything would have been extremely difficult. Brittany tried to convince Grand that she was okay, and that she didn't do anything like that at normal times. The priest nevertheless warned her to be careful. He knew that the prince would not be able to bear it if the girl died right in his arms. Brittany thought her powers would develop much faster. She was dying of boredom, not believing that meditation could really help her in any way. Grand knew that the girl already had everything for this. An ordinary priest would have to train his entire life to use such power, but all she had to do was think. Brittany's advantage may turn out to be a disadvantage, because once she masters mind control, she will learn to control her power faster. Lately, the girl has been lacking confidence. Seeing that Grand was holding something under his hand, Brittany asked what he had there. Having carefully stroked this thing, the priest said that the last thing that awaited them at today's lesson would be practice. That's why he brought this little one. This kitten was being cared for at the temple, but he had a congenital condition. It was different from what the girl had encountered. Grand wanted to see if she could cure him. Brittany carefully intercepted the little kitten. She decided to help him with all the strength she had. To use magical power, one had to first have will and reason, but desire alone was not enough. Britain's power was based on water. Water was the flow of life. The girl needed to feel the energy of the air, trees, and sky around her to cleanse her body. If she had heard about this earlier, she would have thought that it was all very strange. Brittany had already tried using the power when she met the goddess. She was confident that she would succeed. The kitten purred affectionately. Did everything really work out? With gratitude, the baby began to lick the girl affectionately. The kitten was completely healthy and seemed to have regained his energy. Grand looked at the girl silently. His eyes seemed to contain both fear and surprise at the same time. Brittany was afraid that something was wrong, and that she might have used magic incorrectly. The kitten seemed to be doing well. Having come to his senses, Grand apologized for showing the girl his stupidity. The priest was truly surprised. Apart from injuries to internal organs, he did not know that congenital diseases could be cured. Besides, the image of Brittany, he hadn't seen her for a long time. The girl assumed that by her image, he meant Britain. But Grand was an ordinary priest, and it had not been long since he had met the goddess. He thanked Brittany for healing the baby. This was very important, since the children of the temple love him very much. With a smile on her face, the girl said that if there was another kitten, she would be happy to cure it. She asked to let me know if anyone was sick. Then she would heal him. Grand admitted that the lady was indeed a kind person. A special tip that holds a strong poison that can seriously injure with a light touch. It was difficult to remove. There was only one person capable of this, but no one could catch him until now. According to the mercenaries' testimony, the knights searched the black market and found out the source of distribution. Harold was behind all this. Harold was Theo's uncle. He had a bad reputation and decided to clear his name by joining Catherine's family. Despite the risk, it was a shield to be used only as a last resort. With irony in his voice, Castiel was grateful that at least the attack hadn't taken place in the palace. The prince asked his assistant if he had found out anything about the trading place. It was rumored that this place was located between the berths of cargo ships. It looks like they'll be able to find Damon there too. We were talking about the largest black market trader. This man was a shadowy magnate whose influence extended throughout the kingdom, even into neighboring countries. They appeared 5 years ago, establishing themselves as the largest guild and becoming a big problem. Castiel was pleased to have at least some information, and he instructed the knights to proceed with caution. The prince suggested that this place could also be used for trading weapons. If the purpose of this guild is to transport weapons, then this place should be nearby. The boys split up to survey the entire area. Castiel ordered to report immediately if anything interesting was found. It appeared that the boxes found were brought from other countries. The arms trade became strictly regulated, so weapons began to be brought in from abroad. And judging by the scale, the business was big. The Black Market Guild not only dealt with competitors, but also dealt with private cooperation. In the end, it was the civilians who suffered. The prince decided to attack them today and destroy everything, thus revealing Harold's plot. Castiel ordered a perimeter to be established and to make sure they captured the main conspirators. One of the guild members laughed when he saw the customers. He didn't know who they were, but they looked like important people. The prince and his knights stood and listened to the conversation to make sure they were on the right track. The merchant and the buyer suddenly shuddered when they saw the uninvited guests. Without further ado, Castiel slit the throat of one of those present. The merchant jerked sharply and began calling for help, reporting the attack. His defenders stood like pillars, which made him even more afraid. He hugged the chest of gold tightly, hoping to manage to escape. A few minutes later, the black market trader was caught by the prince himself. Trying to save himself, the merchant offered Castiel a deal. The prince warned him that he had better watch his words. All the future sultan wanted was for this man to tell him everything he knew. The merchant had no intention of doing this. He suddenly took out some chain, and with a wave of his hand, an explosion occurred, and this man died. Castiel managed to survive, even though he was caught in the blast. Unfortunately, the only witness was dead. The knight reported that there was no trace left of the guild, asking what instructions would follow next. The prince ordered the bodies to be taken to the chamber and the records of the entrances and exits from the port for the last week to be brought. Castiel was very angry about the failure, but they had to find at least one clue. Bowing, the servant announced that all participants in today's deal were dead. Twisting the dagger in his hand, the stranger asked what was wrong with the cargo. There was information that a cart with goods was heading to the kingdom. The guild members committed suicide with an exploding magic stone. The cargo was seized, and there was a chance to find clues. The servant asked what to do next. The unknown person ordered to forget. Anyway, they moved several times, and they would not be caught. However, the prince turned out to be a pain in the ass for them, so the man in the cloak decided to send him a gift. He decided to create a few incidents in the capital so that Castiel would not have time to worry about such a trifle. The man in the robe ordered to find new guild people with a smart leader. He hated unnecessary noise. At a joint tea party, the queen said that she had heard the latest news. Brittany helped in the stables and in the kitchen, where outsiders were not allowed, and everyone was grateful. The girl felt awkward that she was in the spotlight while doing only what she had to do. She noticed the cat, who was sitting obediently in the queen's arms. He was very beautiful, but the cat was already 15 years old. It was Emma's first animal that came into being when Castiel was born. As they grew up together, it was special to the prince as well. Due to old age, the cat could no longer walk. But before he loved to run everywhere, Brittany asked the queen if she could take a look at the animal, if she didn't mind. The cat had not walked for a long time. His backside was hard as a rock, although if you used force, you could help him. Without waiting, the girl immediately used her power. After some time, the cat began to purr happily. He appeared to be in perfect health. It was unthinkable. The queen could not believe her eyes. She was so happy to see that gold running again. Taking Brittany's hand gently, the queen thanked her. To be honest, the woman had one more request for her. There have been attacks in the capital recently, causing great damage and affecting many people. Unfortunately, there were not enough treatment centers in the kingdom yet. Emma thought it would be great if Brittany took up healing people. Castiel's hand suddenly jumped out in front of the girl. He was against such an idea. This was unacceptable to him, as he could not put anyone in danger. Smiling, the queen asked the girl to leave for a minute, as she needed to talk to her son alone. Mother immediately realized that Castiel liked Brittany. A simple feeling of sympathy could not explain the passion in his heart. The prince wanted to protect her and see her bright smile. He felt like he was going crazy when he saw her tears and sadness. Castiel thought that one day Brittany would meet the one and look tenderly into his eyes. A surprisingly ironic feeling, and it was wrong to reject it. Squeezing his fingers tightly, the prince replied that it was not enough to say that he simply liked her. He treasured her very much. His words sounded so sincere. The woman asked if he knew the weight of his words. Castiel answered confidently that he knew, gently taking her son's hand. The queen still believed that he did not even understand how hard his words were. Emma believed that if the prince valued this girl, he should give her a chance to show herself. If she was dear to him only because of her beauty, then this could not be called falling in love. Castiel thought he could at least protect her. Suddenly, the queen screamed that this was all nonsense. If the son really wants to claim the throne, then he must slow down and look at reality, thus showing Brittany the big world and giving her wings so she can fly. If she herself wants to be with the prince, she will stay with him forever. Only in this case can he truly be with her. This girl was special, and you never knew what danger might be lurking around the corner. However, it was impossible to lock her in the palace like in a cage. The queen believed that her son would later understand everything himself. Gently touching Castiel's shoulder, Emma said that she would go and rest. She didn't want to listen to her son's grumbling today. Brittany was very upset that the prince did not like his mother's idea, of course, because her status now was that of an ordinary house cat. Castiel returned, calling the girl to him. He asked if she had trained with Gran to heal people, and the girl happily replied that her skills were excellent. Brittany grabbed him by the shirt and screamed in horror that he was hurt again. The prince began to justify himself by saying that nothing of the sort had happened, and that the wound was old. He's completely fine now. Still, touching his wound, Brittany thought how difficult it was for him. She buried her face in his chest. After that, she suddenly opened his shirt. Without even asking permission, the girl began healing. The last thing she wanted was for Castiel to get sick. She really hoped that she would help him, and he would be completely fine. The prince grabbed Brittany abruptly and lifted her up. Fear and bewilderment were evident in her eyes. The prince found this very funny. Gently wrapping his arms around her body, Castiel promised that he would do anything for her. After talking with Emma, Brittany and Grand visited the temple. Of course, there was a stir when the stranger became a priest. After the test demonstration of abilities, the discontent subsided. Horror froze in people's eyes, and then the girl realized what a frightening power she had received. However, Brittany believed that it made no difference whether she was a witch or an angel from the world of gods. The girl asked Grand if he had heard what strange rumors were circulating in the palace. Perhaps the priest heard, but people have always loved to gossip. Brittany was afraid that this might gradually reveal that she was a cat. Grand asked the lady what she thought it meant to be sent by the goddess. The girl, a little confused, replied that this could mean that she was an adornment next to the Sultan. For the priest, this statement seemed interesting. People said that the cat from the prophecy was a sacred animal. Now, however, was not the best time to reveal the truth to everyone. If it turns out that the cat from the prophecy is a human, this can lead to great confusion, and the girl will face many temptations. Brittany was outraged by such words. She had already decided that she would help Castiel, and she was not going to change her decision. Alas! But people will think so. They will make every effort to attract the girl's attention, said the priest. No one can know what this will ultimately lead to. Brittany agreed with Grand. He was right. Her holy power was incomparable to anything. Before it was enough to accept the saint, but there are those who want to use it for harm. The girl heard for the first time that her power could be considered holy. Seeing Grand's reaction, she thought she had said something wrong. Jumping up abruptly, the priest said that, in short, if she wanted to help the temple healers, then she would have to control herself. Given all the circumstances, Grand cried out that he needed to train even harder. Brittany was already dying without strength, and if she becomes a priest, then she will have to try even harder. Castiel returned to the room, asking the cat how she was. From that moment, everything seemed to be fine. Gently stroking the cat, the prince realized that he missed her human form. Once a feeling flared up, it kindled an uncontrollable fire in his thoughts. He wanted to tell her that he loved her, to ask her to stay close. Unfortunately, the prince had to let the girl do whatever she wanted, because that was the only way to create a real relationship, which meant the flame had to be extinguished. Castiel admitted that he had no one to talk to. Sometimes he wished so much that a friend was nearby. He asked the cat if she would mind if they talked today. The prince wanted to do it right now. She supposed that this could only mean one thing now, that Castiel would kiss her. Besides, if she changes her appearance, she will remain human until the morning, and will have to do it again to last the whole day. The prince sighed heavily and said that, as expected, this was somewhat difficult to do. He really appreciated having Brittany around, but he must have been too greedy. Castiel blamed himself for not having friends. As expected, he had no one except Brittany. The cat herself decided to touch his lips so that the conversation would go more in the right direction. A moment later, she turned into a human. Noticing his silence, the girl wondered what was wrong, since he himself wanted to talk. Castiel asked her to stop looking at him like that, admitting that he had played on her pity. He just really wanted Brittany to be in human form today. The girl pounced on him because she thought that something had happened and was worried about it. Castiel gently took her hand, asking if she promised not to fight anymore. He gently hugged the girl. This was exactly what the prince was missing. Deciding to defuse the situation, he joked that if Brittany hadn't stopped beating him, he would have had to go to the priest. This couple laughed so cutely together because of this joke. After kissing the girl's hand, Castiel nevertheless admitted that something was bothering him. She immediately began to wonder what was going on, whether there was really that much work, or whether someone was bothering the prince. Or maybe he wanted to discuss something more important. Brittany decided to ask if Castiel's conversation with a certain man named Damon was related. The prince shuddered when he heard this name. Brittany didn't know who this man was, but she had heard Theo's conversation with Catherine earlier. They were standing far away, so she didn't understand everything, but they were talking about this man, about some goods and their shipment abroad. Brittany only understood that this man was going to send something to the capital. Castiel grabbed the girl abruptly by the shoulder and asked what happened between her and Theo. He immediately thought that his brother had gotten close to the girl in order to use her for political purposes, but he was afraid that he was wrong. All these assumptions made the prince incredibly angry. Brittany began to justify herself by saying that nothing special had happened between them. Now she felt like she was deceiving Castiel, and it made her chest hurt. What she knew for sure was that she shouldn't tell anyone that Theo could turn her into a human too, because this news will be a big blow to Castiel's position. Besides, if she said that she once lost consciousness, the prince would be very worried. Brittany had to lie that she was walking in the garden one day and accidentally overheard this conversation. To avoid any further questions, the girl added that at that moment she was walking in the guise of a cat. Castiel looked at the girl with extreme distrust. It seemed as if he was reading her completely. Brittany decided that if she gave the prince a quick hug, it would distract him from these thoughts. She apologized for making him worry, admitting that he just wants his work to go well. In her sweetest voice, Brittany asked Castiel not to be mad at her. The prince understood everything, but strictly asked that the girl not dare to approach Theo next time. This man was dangerous, even though he didn't look like it at first glance. After these words, Brittany remembered the expression on the prince's face when he said that he was seeing her for the first time. There was no mistake that he really was not who he claimed to be, and the girl herself did not want to catch his eye anymore. Castiel was right to think that Brittany should be assigned more guards. She started screaming that this was too much. 2 or 3 would have been quite enough. With a smile on his face, the prince asked if she would like him to personally accompany her to the city. Castiel suggested that she think better about what she liked more, him or the guards. At this, he got out of bed, saying that it was already late. Having put out the candle, the prince said that it was time to go to bed. Smiling, Brittany said that it was the right decision, hinting to Castiel that it was time for him to go to his room, but the boy did not want to do so. He abruptly laid the girl down on the bed, hugging her. The prince decided to let her sleep like this in exchange for her telling him a good thing. Brittany slowly moved away from him, saying that in that case she would just lie down to sleep on the pillow. That would be more correct. She was once again pulled into Castiel's arms, the prince insisting that she should try to sleep while he held her. He was going to lie in this position until she fell asleep. Without expecting it from herself, Brittany suddenly shouted goodnight to him. She felt incredibly ashamed of the whole situation. In the morning, Castiel woke up before Brittany. He gently ran his hand through her hair. She was sleeping so sweetly. Leaning right over her face, the prince whispered that he wanted Brittany to always be by his side. For a moment, Castiel wondered what the girl would say if she woke up right during his confession. He was sure that these words would burden her. Besides, now he was the only one receiving help. If Brittany says she wants to leave, she won't be able to help him with the curse that might come back. Oddly enough, besides the pain, he was afraid that one day she would disappear. The queen once asked her son if he knew what Brittany had asked her for, since others in her place would have asked for land or wealth. What the girl wanted was freedom. The mother asked him if the girl could be happy somewhere else, not with Castiel. Would he let her go? The prince didn't know if even if Brittany became free, she would stay with him. This question tormented him. He didn't know what to do, whether he could be with her. Kissing her gently so as not to wake her, Castiel asked her to wait a little longer. He was going to work even harder to become a man worthy of this girl. Seeing her smiling in her sleep, the prince wished good night to his princess. A few days later, the day Brittany decided to visit the treatment center in the capital, luckily, Castiel agreed to assign her a guard instead of going himself. Seeing the girl looking around, the knight asked if she was looking for something. Brittany asked Aaron if she had seen Grand, but the girl had not seen him. He had not come here. Frozen for a second, she remembered that the priest's servant had given her something. What Grand gave her was in the carriage. There was a bag with a stone and a letter. Grand wrote a letter to the lady for the first time. He said that she worked hard to improve her abilities and did better than he expected. The priest could not teach her anything more. He praised her from the bottom of his heart. Brittany smiled. She was very surprised by the praise from Grand. He also wrote that from today on, she no longer has to come to his training sessions. In conclusion, he said that from now on, it would be better for her to explore this world and herself on her own. Since he would be gone for a while, he hoped that Brittany would overcome any difficulties that came her way by providing a small gift that would delay her stay in cat form. The girl was furious, because in other words, she had nowhere to expect help from now on, and she had to figure it out herself. She considered it irresponsible on the part of the teacher. Even a cat abandons her kittens to their fate when they reach a certain age so that they learn to survive. The same thing happened to her. But what angered her most was that Grand did not talk to her personally, but conveyed everything in a letter. If you think about it, the priest was always emotionally agitated. At times he seemed alarmed, as if he had revealed a forgotten secret and hidden it, as if he was afraid that Brittany would find out this secret. She could never understand a man who lived for hundreds of years. However, she did not know if she could get rid of sadness. Time passed so quickly in her thoughts that the girl did not notice how she arrived in the capital to a treatment center. The knight said that initially it was the largest temple in the capital. At present, the number of patients increased, and the queen opened it to everyone. He opened the door behind which was the heart of the hospital. In this place, there were many wounded and sick people. Brittany just couldn't believe her eyes. She saw the patient in critical condition from the road. The first thing she thought of was that she had to help. The knight blocked the picture with his back, forbidding Brittany to go there, as she might see an unpleasant scene. Pushing him away, the girl shouted that she came here specifically to help people. Otherwise, why would they have come such a long way here? The wounded woman begged to save her child. She didn't care what would happen to herself. The doctors couldn't cope. There was too much blood. When the doctor saw Brittany, he started yelling at her to get out, as only urgent patients were allowed in there. She walked forward insistently, introducing herself as a healer from the palace, saying that she could help the girl. The doctors began to whisper among themselves. They did not believe that such a young girl was a priest. Hearing whispers behind his back, the knight turned to them, introducing himself as the governor of the capital and Castiel's assistant. He guaranteed Brittany's status by asking her to refrain from being rude in this emergency. Leaning over the wounded woman, the girl asked for silence. She needed to concentrate. She began to pray that the mother and child of this woman would be okay. A huge blue flash emitted by Brittany formed above the wounded woman. The doctors couldn't believe their eyes. And how was this even possible? The bleeding stopped and all the wounds healed. The girl looked incredibly happy she did it. The woman jumped up, immediately asking about her baby. Brittany calmed her down, asking her to focus on treatment. The wounded woman began to cry. She tenderly squeezed the hand of her savior and thanked her, swearing that she would never forget what she had done for her and her child. The doctors still couldn't believe their eyes. They had never heard of such a miracle healer before, and couldn't understand how she could do such a thing in a few minutes. The man who runs the treatment center apologized for the late greeting. His name was Dark. Brittany surprised him when he came out to meet her and saw a blinding light. The girl smiled and apologized, citing the urgency of the situation. Dark thanked her for her help, mentioning again about the light being too bright, asking if it could be hidden somehow. The head of the treatment center asked her if Brittany had seen the people who came in after them. These were relatives of the patients. They were here so that the girl could heal them. Today, they managed to send them back. But next time, Dark assumed that it would not be possible to do without the use of force. Brittany's happiness turned to sadness. She couldn't treat a lot of people yet, so she had to be more careful. To begin with, Dark began to talk about the infirmary. Initially, it was small and divided into several parts under the control of the royal family. Recently, explosions have become more frequent throughout the city, and more people have been injured in encounters with criminals. Due to the large number of wounded, a treatment center was opened here. When there was chaos, it was women and old people who suffered. To be honest, the situation in the capital was terrible now. There was disorder everywhere. Brittany asked Darkhan to prepare data on the state of the infirmary. The man immediately agreed, but there was bewilderment on his face and a lack of understanding as to why she needed all this. In a voice of absolute confidence, the girl declared that she had an idea. The territorial struggle was so pointless. Unlike their reputation, their skills disappointed Castiel. The prince ordered his assistant to investigate the area. He also ordered the arrest and interrogation of those who were alive. It was necessary to urgently find the initiators of the riots. Castiel was furious because these were the people who were destroying the capital. He knew there was a smart leader behind all this. The balance of power was important here, just as when a scale is tipped to the other side by a weight. This incident was caused by someone who knew the situation and turned it to his advantage by moving the board onto the weight. Castiel felt as if an invisible hand was playing with him. Taking on the role of governor, he analyzed data on criminals clearly linked to Katrina. He only managed to find out the name of the guild, which was called Dianther. After the last incident at the port, everything seemed to have become clear, but their identity remained a mystery again. The prince's assistant came to report the news. They received information that the head of Dianther was alive. They cleared everything out. Some started talking before the interrogation. About a month ago, a major conflict occurred between those involved in smuggling prohibited goods. The number of supplies was sharply reduced in the place where the goods were supplied, and only a few were given monopoly rights. Castiel threw the documents aside abruptly, realizing that the conflict had flared up on its own. In addition, the organizations that were given exceptions encouraged their competitors to rebel. They seemed to have prepared thoroughly. Violence and territorial disputes, kings occupying positions indiscriminately. Brittany was at the center of it all. Castiel felt incredibly ashamed of his helplessness. He never wanted to let her go. He promised to do everything the girl wanted. Then Brittany told him the information she heard from Theo. Only now did the prince realize that the girl was alone in his brother's room, but he didn't know what she was doing there. At first, he got angry because she was there alone. Now that he thought about it, he realized that the data he had received indicated that the disintegration of Dianther was a hoax. It was then that Castiel realized that the man they had imagined did not exist. The veracity of this information was confirmed by Brittany's testimony, so the next target was the goods. The prince ordered his assistant to examine all the supplies that were coming into the capital, and if he noticed anything suspicious, he was to report it immediately. Castiel also ordered that all of the governor's available workforce, with the exception of her guards, be deployed for the time being. Slamming his hand on the table, the prince declared that they had to restore order in the capital within a month. The assistant asked if the gentleman had any plan. Castiel knew his enemy was mistaken in thinking he could manipulate him with such a pathetic trick. Everyone was discussing the news about the temple. Since the whole neighborhood was talking about it, it was impossible not to know, since there were rumors that someone with incredible power had appeared. Supposedly, this girl was the incarnation of a goddess. Brittany broke the magic stone without any force. At this rate, she will become famous, and people will come to the temple, the servants discussed. There were also rumors that this girl came from Prince Castiel himself. Harold was starting to get annoyed. Wherever he went, everyone was talking about this girl. The more the rumors spread, the stronger Queen Emma's position became. The Sultan's power will be further strengthened. Against her background, the power of the aristocrats will fall, and then she will deprive Harold of his head without delay. He knew he had to do something to survive, but he didn't know what yet. The man was completely confused by the lack of knowledge, but he was sure that he had to take Brittany into his arms. Harold ordered his servant to call an assassin. He was going to deal with someone. The head of the treatment center was worried that the girl might overdo it, since she had already healed 10 people since the morning. She knew she had to step up her game as the treatment center expanded. There was clearly a morale boost at this point, and if that was the case, she needed to work even harder. Dark was surprised. He didn't know that Brittany would personally talk to the Sultan. The man was glad that everything went well. After the expansion, it definitely became much more comfortable. Thanks to this girl, they could accept more patients, so their position also became stronger. Dark was sure that the brightest future awaited them. It was only now that Brittany realized that half a month had already passed since her first visit to the hospital. From that day on, her lifestyle changed completely. She began to get up early, hold a morning meeting, and enjoy a light breakfast. Previously, the girl always spent time with Aaron after classes with Grand. With each passing day, Brittany grew more and more tired. But it was inevitable, so she even began to get used to it. She really wanted the priest to be nearby and give her advice. She was busy with her work and didn't notice how the days were flying by. She would like to believe that it was all for the best. Aaron came to see how the lady was feeling, since she treats more than 20 people a day, or even more, and that's not counting her other duties. Brittany admitted that she was a little tired in the morning, but it was okay. She was full of energy again after a good night's sleep. Aaron suddenly screamed sharply. Could this really be the reason for the girl's recent blackout after turning into a cat? Definitely. The girl has been turning into a cat more often lately. It seemed that the more energy she uses, the faster she returns to this form. It was like Brittany's battery was running low. She felt great when she got enough sleep, so it didn't matter. What worried her most was how busy Castiel was lately. According to what Aaron heard from her brother, recently the prince rarely visits the governor's residence and returns to his palace late at night. Brittany suddenly became worried, hoping that Castiel wasn't doing anything dangerous. Unfortunately, Aaron didn't know all the details, only that the governor-general had thrown all his efforts into resolving the capital's crisis, so good news could soon be expected. Brittany wondered if the prince's assistant should have joined him in that case. Aaron was outraged because Castiel himself assigned her brother to the girl. She knew the prince was worried about her, but she was worried about him too. Brittany thanked Aaron for the tea, but it was time to get back to treatment. The girl immediately fell onto the bed. She had had a hard day. There was a sudden influx of patients that left her shaking at the end of the day, but she held on with all her might. Brittany assumed something had happened, since there had been so many people with injuries today. It turned out that there was a massacre in the city center. Fortunately, thanks to the soldiers, there appeared to be few civilian casualties. With fear in her eyes and a trembling voice, Brittany asked if the governor's men were among the wounded. The prince's assistant entered the room to explain that today's incident was part of an operation to eliminate the black market, and that Master Castiel himself took charge and minimized the damage. He reassured the girl that the prince and his allies were completely safe. Unfortunately, due to this incident, Brittany had to postpone the treatment of those citizens who were expecting it today. The girl was very upset, as many people spoke out against this because they found it in poor condition. Dark mumbled that the lady had already helped many people today, and now she should rest. With confidence, Brittany replied that she knew the state of her body better, so she asked to be allowed to heal as many people as possible. Today, the girl helped 30 people. She was completely exhausted. She started to feel sick in the carriage. Aaron asked to slow down so that the lady could rest. The girl was frightened that they were returning by an unknown road, since the movement of crews on the main road was limited due to today's fight in the city center. Criminals were being transported along another route with a convoy. They had to choose a different route, a safer one. The prince's assistant assured her that she was in good hands and could rest without worrying about anything. Aaron asked Brittany to sleep while they were on the way, and once they arrived at the palace, she would wake her up. Castiel ordered all the captured to be put behind bars and interrogated those who looked to be of higher rank one by one. Then he asked what damage they had suffered today. He was informed that the mercenary revolt had resulted in many civilian casualties, and the seriously wounded had been sent to a medical center. After these words, Castiel thought about Brittany. She looked very tired lately. He was worried if everything was okay with her. With such a flow of victims, they did not have time to exchange even a few words. Today, they absolutely had to find time to have dinner together. Out of nowhere, the prince's assistant appeared, shouting at the top of his lungs that something bad had happened, that the lady's carriage had been attacked. Castiel's eyes lit up with fury. Aaron tried to bring the wounded Brittany to her senses. Finally, the lady woke up. The girl was now least concerned about her condition. She was trying to understand what had happened. Aaron said that the carriage overturned in the blink of an eye. Brittany quickly fell asleep from fatigue. Aaron looked out the window, trying to figure out how far they were from the palace. The girl hoped that they would arrive soon, when suddenly there was a rumble. The horses were killed. The carriage overturned. The girl immediately rushed to her mistress, but she was already unconscious. With tears in her eyes, Aaron asked what they should do now. But Brittany tried to calm her down first. At such moments, it was necessary to remain calm. The horse and the coachman were dead. If they sent so many people for one cart, it means they already knew about Brittany's forces. To begin with, the girl decided to do what she could. The knights gave it their all, but the girl couldn't help but help them. She did everything in her power. Brittany decided that she had to heal the wounded and call for reinforcements. She was about to find anyone who was still breathing when one of the attackers called out to her. Putting his sword to Aaron's throat, he advised her to remove the protective barrier before he did anything to the girl. For a moment, Brittany froze. She didn't know what to do, how to minimize losses and save Aaron. The attacker threatened to bleed Aaron if Brittany didn't understand otherwise. The lady shouted to the knights that she was removing the protective barrier and that they should be extremely careful. She ordered them to put their own lives before hers. The attacker ordered Brittany to approach him slowly and without any nonsense. She slowly walked towards him, knowing that she was his main target and that she couldn't get rid of him so easily. The girl asked the attacker to allow her to heal Aaron. Surprisingly, he allowed her to do it, but very quickly. Brittany realized that whoever was behind all this was in a strong enough position to get away with it. Besides, this man has enough money for such a number of mercenaries, and if information leaks, he will definitely find a way to shut the unwanted mouth. The attacker grabbed Brittany by the hair, calling himself an uneducated bastard who wasn't going to answer her smart questions. He ordered her to shut up and move, saying that she was being paid very well. The insignificant one coveted such precious prey. It was so stupid. A stranger in a robe appeared. The leader of the attackers began to shout that they should kill him since he stood in their way. Pretending not to be bothered by the situation, the man in the robes extended his hand to Brittany and asked if she could stand up on her own. Seeing the distrust in her eyes, he tried to convince the girl that her protection was his main goal. She didn't know if she could trust him, but she had used up too much power today. It seemed like this was her limit. The stranger apologized for his insolence, but it was for Brittany's convenience after these words. He took her in his arms. Peeking out from around the corner, the rescuer said that the attackers had definitely fallen behind, but it was better to wait a little until they left completely. Brittany kept her eyes on the stranger. His voice seemed very familiar to her. Feeling that the girl was staring at him, the stranger asked what was wrong. She asked him in a trembling voice who he was and why he helped her. The stranger laughed. He found it funny that Brittany still didn't understand who he was, and then he threw off his hood. In front of the girl was none other than Theo. The prince was offended that the girl did not recognize him right away, since he could recognize her by the slightest sign. She felt awkward around him, especially since he began to ask her solicitously if it hurt, trying to stop the blood that was oozing from the wound. Brittany began to struggle, demanding that he let her go since she no longer felt in danger. Suddenly, the girl's strength left her body, and she lost consciousness. Transforming into a cat, Brittany snored on Theo's arm. The prince said out loud that she put the well-being of others first. Despite being so weak herself, he didn't like how she was so careless with her body. When she woke up, the cat had a terrible headache and didn't understand where she was, but was glad that nothing special had happened. When she decided to quickly get out of this place, Theo appeared out of nowhere, who saw that the cat had woken up. Finding that he had frightened her, the prince immediately asked for forgiveness for it. Brittany began to remember what had happened, and a question arose in her head. Was the prince with her all this time? Theo asked how she was feeling, without waiting for an answer, adding that the doctor had said she would feel better after a little rest. The prince found it difficult to understand the cat, but judging by her expression, everything was fine. He reached out to touch Brittany, but the cat hissed aggressively, stopping him from doing so. Theo thought for a moment, wondering if there had been some kind of misunderstanding. He told the girl that he had gone for a walk that night, lost in his thoughts, and had accidentally saved her. Brittany frowned, not wanting to believe this nonsense that he had just happened to show up at such a perfect moment. The prince tried to evoke pity, citing the fact that he tried to save her with the best of intentions, but found himself in distrust. Crouching down next to the cat, he stated seriously that fighting a pack of bandits was a serious matter, but for her sake, he was willing to do it. Looking at the cat, Theo asked if she could stay there. He warned her that if she stayed with his brother, the girl would always be in danger, and she might end up on the street, having lost her uselessness. Castiel is the future Sultan, and in order to support the council and the Janissaries, he needed a girl of suitable status. Ultimately, Brittany will have to watch from the sidelines, Theo said. Reaching out his hand towards her again, he asked if the cat still wanted to return to Prince Castiel, but she only turned her head away from him. As Theo expected, Brittany still avoided his touch. He was offended that his brother could touch her without any problem. The cat knew that Castiel had a reason for this, but she didn't understand why Theo was so upset. Rising, the prince said that when dawn broke, he would ask the nearest temple for her protection. Of course, he was going to ask for the protection of the cat from the prophecy to keep their secret. Before leaving, Theo told Brittany to rest while she had time. The prince decided to find out which of the guys touched the girl. At that moment, you could see from her face how strong she was. Prince Theo was very pleased with himself. Castiel asked sharply if there was any news. There was no news, and it was as if Brittany had disappeared without a trace. The prince began to think whose idea it could be to attack in full force. This man had clearly lost his fear. He was so furious that he was going to kill everyone and rip out their limbs for this. Castiel prayed that the girl was safe and sound and that she was not in any danger. The gentleman's rage was interrupted by his assistant, who said that they had found the girl. The letter said that she was under the protection of the temple. Castiel immediately ordered him to be taken there. Harold was incredibly angry that the mercenaries had made a fuss and then let the girl escape. The leader of the mercenaries convinced him that kidnapping the girl would be easy, but there could be trouble. If the prince's guards are with her, they will need more workers. Taking out another bag of money, Harold agreed to this, but it was important to him that Brittany be delivered quietly so that no one would know about it. The man was angry. Not only did those damn bastards miss out on the girl, but they also made a fuss. Harold was panicking, afraid to imagine what the Sultan and Castiel would do to him when they found out who was behind this. The man ordered his servant to catch the mercenaries involved and deal with them, but he himself was in a hurry to go somewhere. Now he simply had no other choice but to ask for help. Catherine was amused that her brother couldn't figure it out, so he came to her. Harold smiled apologetically and referred to the fact that he was not a particularly lucky man. He blamed himself for not knowing in advance that the cat from the prophecy would also be in the carriage. Otherwise, he would have preferred to intervene and die. Catherine could not understand the point of stubbornly hiding a woman who possessed enormous holy power and now putting her on public display. As soon as Castiel's coming-of-age ceremony was over, his lover appeared next to him. Catherine thought it was an attempt to soften the damage done to his status, but this girl turned out to be no ordinary woman. She was definitely up to something. Brittany was also related to Queen Emma, which could have helped in many ways, but Harold only added to the trouble. Catherine asked what happened to the maid who tried to break into Theo's palace. This turned out to be another failure. The woman knew that her son had eyes and ears there, but she could not find out anything. At that moment, she wondered what her son was doing now. She didn't like that Theo didn't take the organization they had worked hard to build seriously and showed no affection for anything. Catherine kept waiting for the moment when her son would want to take over the Sultan's place. Taking advantage of the opportunity, Harold asked to borrow money for this incident. Before Catherine could answer, there was a loud crash. It was Theo. It was clear from the prince's face that he was furious. Seeing Harold with his mother, the boy smiled. He was glad that they were both here, as this would help him avoid unnecessary trouble. The uncle called his nephew impatient. Since he dropped in without knocking, the matter must be important. Smiling, Catherine asked what could be so important that Theo was in such a hurry. The prince came here in person to hear an explanation about yesterday. The woman thought that her son meant the attack on Dianther, but all she knew was that Castiel had done it. It was not about an attack on Dianther, but about something completely different. A little tense, Catherine asked if she understood correctly that her son was talking about the woman the queen was looking after. The woman found it surprising that her son would be so interested in Castiel's mistress, but after hearing how his mother called Brittany, Theo angrily asked her not to call her that. He warned that if she talked about Brittany like that, he wouldn't even hear it from his mother now. The prince warned Harold and Catherine to be careful. As Theo left, he ordered that, from now on, they never touch that girl. Otherwise, he would not stand aside if they hurt her. Harold jumped up, calling his nephew an impudent man who said what he wanted and just left. Catherine immediately changed the subject, saying that the tea had gotten cold and it would be nice to bring some more. The man immediately took this into account, preparing to go down and order more tea. This was not what the woman wanted. She asked her brother to bring the tea personally. In her first days in power, Emma removed a number of high-ranking aristocrats for the sake of stability and suppressed protests. Because of this, most people were against her, even though they swore allegiance to the queen. Moreover, she used a girl named Brittany. Killing her would be a waste of resources, so Catherine decided to see if it would be okay to leave her alive. The girl woke up completely disheveled, but in human form. Castiel sat next to her bed, waiting for her to wake up. Brittany jumped in surprise. The prince frightened her with his presence. Approaching her, he asked how she felt. The girl tried with her whole appearance to show that she was completely fine. Surprisingly, she even got some sleep. Brittany noticed only now, turning her attention to Castiel, that he looked rather disheveled. Early this morning, he was informed that the girl was under the protection of the temple. They handed it over without saying a word. The prince found her sleeping in the form of a cat. Brittany began to apologize for causing him so much worry. Castiel clung to her as he heard her want to come back. But suddenly, she transformed into a cat. The prince asked the girl not to say anything, but just to be together like this for a while. Brittany laughed. She felt ticklish. The girl felt as if she had a big dog. Castiel blamed himself for the girl's disappearance. He admitted that he could not bear it if something happened to her. Brittany didn't want him to think about it, because now she was sitting right in front of him, perfectly fine. She even showed that she was full of energy. Castiel vowed to find the attackers and not let it happen again. With fury in his eyes, he promised to ensure that they would meet the most miserable end. In any case, Brittany shouldn't think about anything, but just relax. She needed rest. Gently taking the prince by the hand, the girl asked him to rest too. She saw what state he was in now. He didn't want her to worry about him. The fact that Castiel had found a girl brought him more than just a sense of relief. Also, a feeling of happiness. Brittany admitted that she felt awkward hearing this. The prince grinned and said that he was going to say that more often. But what if she was already embarrassed? He asked her to stay here for a while, and if she needed anything, to feel free to contact the maid. If she felt unwell, she should immediately call Castiel. This was important for the prince. Brittany assured him that he had nothing to worry about and could safely return to work. As soon as the door to her room closed, the girl immediately plopped down on the bed. That's how it all ended. A normal life awaited her again. Brittany begged to be let out. Little did she know that sometime meant a week already. She didn't think that they wouldn't let her out for 7 days. But Irene thought that after such an incident, 7 days wasn't that long. Besides, the lady was written to so much. That's why she felt like a super important person. She didn't know this when Grand was around. But now that he was gone, Brittany felt like there were a lot of holes around. She couldn't believe that the priest was in control of all this. The high priest approached the girl and asked her to spare him a minute of her time. She froze in surprise that such an important person wanted her time. He suggested taking a walk and talking alone. The high priest was honored to meet her. Brittany asked if he was joking. She was just sick of how everyone was treating her like she was incredible lately. The man laughed, assuring the girl that the old man's lips were full of impeccable sincerity. Brittany immediately asked if he had come to see her on some business, or if it was because she had missed the service. The high priest came for a completely different reason. He wanted to tell the girl about Grande. He did not think that she had been explained the reason for his leaving the temple. The girl said that the priest left only after leaving her a letter, which made her very sad. Looking at Brittany, the high priest asked if she even knew what kind of person Grand was. She knew he was a little strange, but special. Grand waited for a long time for the star, that is, her, and said that an important period would soon come. He left Britain precisely to prepare for this time. The girl did not understand what important period was being discussed. She knew that Grand was waiting for the cat from the prophecy to appear. The queen herself said that perhaps the priest would create even greater chaos. He really waited a long time. Brittany had no desire to be associated with a legend. She was just herself. The high priest agreed with her words. Grand also did not want the girl to worry about him. In that case, she didn't understand why the man was telling her all this. The high priest was by the priest's side since childhood. He entered this palace in the distant past, 70 years ago. No one knew how long Grand had existed, and no one was sure if he was even human. He was more like an apostle of God, just like Brittany. The girl began to look around sharply. She was very tense that the high priest was talking about such things here. She breathed a sigh of relief. It was fortunate that there was no one nearby who could overhear their conversation. Brittany tried to explain that she was not like Grand, but just an ordinary person who sometimes turns into a cat. It was difficult to call this girl ordinary. The high priest asked her if she already knew that the priest was a seer. According to him, Brittany now lives as the embodiment of a goddess. But with time, she will be able to enjoy life as an ordinary person. The girl could hardly believe these words, that she could become an ordinary person again. The high priest was sure of this, because Grand was never wrong. The man was also sure that the priest wanted this more than anyone else. When he first started his priestly career, there was a girl next to Grand, who was called a saint at the time. She had great power. In the kingdom, women like her were dedicated to God at a certain age. Grand made great efforts to prevent the sacrifice of the saints, but he failed. Brittany had heard that there were no more saints, so now she understood why the priest had reacted that way. The previous sultan called this system an old and evil law and banned it, but Queen Emma adheres to this method, and now there are simply no saints. It was unreasonable for someone to die for God. The old men, like the high priest, remembered this story. Brittany had no idea that Grand had such a past. If that girl was special to him, were they lovers? The man had been watching Grand the most in this palace, so perhaps he was the one who could understand his true feelings the best. Bowing his head to Brittany, the high priest thanked her. The girl shuddered, not understanding why he was thanking her, and most importantly, for what. It turns out that thanks to her, the man saw how Grand smiled and spoke like a human being. According to the high priest, Brittany couldn't imagine how happy he was to see it again before he got older and passed away. Turning to the lady, the man asked her to remember this. No matter what happens, Grand will never hate her. Brittany didn't understand why he was talking like something was actually going to happen. The high priest left, only telling her to think of it as an old man's concern. He left the girl alone with her thoughts. The capital had been suspiciously quiet lately. The attack on the empty Dianther base was a warning of sorts, but there was no reaction. Castiel couldn't understand how this was profitable if the illegal trade was becoming less and less. He also didn't understand what the point of all the fuss was. Was it just to sow chaos in the capital, or did Dianther want to warn them? All these thoughts gave the prince a headache. He had no doubt that Harold was involved in all the events. It was only thanks to this man that Catherine could get involved in a dirty business without revealing herself. Moreover, he gradually increased his influence by collaborating with the Janissaries, who disliked Queen Emma. If Harold really was behind the attack, Castiel won't let it go that easily. He needed more strength. Brittany needed urgent protection. The prince was going to destroy the enemy and turn him into something he himself would not dare to look at. A maid entered the room. Castiel asked her where Brittany was now, hearing that she attended a service at the temple and returned to her room to rest. He wanted to have dinner with her today, so he ordered the maid to send someone to inform the girl about it. Before the maid had even left his office, Castiel had disappeared without a trace, and he decided that he would get to Brittany faster. Brittany wasn't sure if this was right. The prince believed that many things were simply controlled. The girl still insisted that this was too much. She just begged him to let her out, but Castiel didn't want to let her out of the room. Brittany realized that it was useless to fight him, so she simply suggested moving the treatment center to the royal palace. The prince thought this was a good idea and thought of issuing the decree that very day. The girl realized that he was simply making fun of her, telling him to forget what she said. It just happened to be, by the way. Castiel knew in advance that Brittany would want to leave the palace after spending some time with her. He couldn't ignore it. It was complete nonsense, and what made it worse for her was that he knew about her desire and still kept her locked up. The prince was sorry that everything turned out this way, but he also had a lot that he wanted to show. For example, the endless desert and the oasis, the night sky where the stars illuminated the wide plain. Castiel had a period of travel planned soon, so he wanted to go with Brittany. Looking into her eyes, he asked her what she thought about it and whether she would join him. The girl blushed from awkwardness. She didn't know what to answer him. Castiel clasped his hands nervously and promised that he would make sure that nothing like last time happened and that she was comfortable while they were on the road. Brittany screamed that she would go. She wanted to go with the prince, and she had no reason to refuse. Hearing these words, Castiel felt a great sense of relief. The girl reminded him that she was still offended, despite the fact that she agreed to go with him, asking at the same time when the tour would take place. Several weeks later, the number of patients visiting the hospital increased after rumors spread. The head of the treatment center said that nothing could be done about it. Many people learned that Brittany could cure incurable diseases. Things were bad, as the work would never end. But now was not the time to stop there. To begin with, the girl suggested preventing further rumors and taking measures to ensure that emergency patients receive treatment first. Their conversation was interrupted by a stranger in a robe who asked if she was Mrs. Brittany. The head of the treatment center immediately covered the girl with his body, asking her to get out of here, since outsiders were not allowed to enter. The man threw off his robe and said that he had a message from a noble man. Brittany became interested in the letter, and then the stranger handed it to her. She noticed the signature on the envelope. The letter was from Catherine. That's right, there was a sick person in Catherine's workhouse now. The man came here to ask for Brittany's help. The head of the treatment center whispered that there was only one Catherine in the country. The girl did not know what to do. The last thing she wanted was to get involved with this woman. After all, if an urgent patient appears, it will be much more difficult to refuse. The letter stated that there was only one sick person in this house. Brittany suggested that if that was the case, it would be okay. Maybe it would be better to resolve it quickly than to refuse and sign up for unkind gossip. The girl agreed to help only one patient. Once she arrived at the workhouse, Brittany couldn't believe her eyes. The building looked more like an aristocratic country house, and running such a facility must have cost a lot of money. There was no light in the room, all because the girl had a unique disease that causes burning pain when sunlight falls on the body, and sometimes even melts the skin. Brittany clarified whether she understood correctly that this girl's skin was melting from the sun's rays. According to their local priest, it was a kind of curse. There was no improvement, so the help of the lady was needed. The girl thought that even Castiel's curse was helped by her power. Maybe this too could be cured. The girl begged for help. She was in incredible pain. Brittany took her hand and asked her not to worry. She certainly wasn't sure she could do it, but it was worth a try. The man who brought the lady said that he had never seen such a beautiful light before. It was mysterious, since the child was not hurt by such brightness. After some time, Brittany finished the healing by suggesting that the curtains be pulled back. The girl raised herself and began to rub her eyes from such blinding brightness. Only a second later did she realize that it was so bright, but it didn't hurt. The little girl started screaming that her beautiful sister had cured her. Catherine found out that all the rumors were true. The illness imposed by Hans was so easily removed. The guy cast a frivolous curse as a test, but Brittany clearly has superior strength, even though he thought she was a scammer who was talking until the very end. Catherine understood why Queen Emma had intervened, and the plan had gone awry. The girl was stronger than the woman thought. She became greedy, and thoughts immediately began to arise in her head about how she could win Brittany over to her side and use her for her own purposes. Catherine asked her servant if he had any ideas, because Emma and Castiel would not let the girl go just like that. From now on, she would have to gradually find out about this. The woman decided to start with the conditions under which the queen was holding Brittany. The tour period is starting soon, so it's worth trying before it starts. Castiel will definitely be accompanying Brittany on the day of the trip. Catherine ordered to try different methods, and if they do not work, then we will have to approach this issue differently. In extreme cases, if this doesn't work out, then we'll have to deal with both of them. Catherine was looking forward to this moment. Brittany stood and looked at the huge number of suitcases, which were all gifts from Catherine. The volume was significant, so various rumors could start to spread. Having opened the letter, the girl was very interested to know what this woman had in mind. In the letter, she wrote that she invited Brittany because of an urgent patient, but was unable to even greet him due to being busy. The woman consoled herself with the hope that her gifts would serve as a worthy apology. Catherine carefully selected these gifts, hoping that the girl would be pleased with them. The girl smirked, considering this unpleasant person a show-off. She even sent gifts, acted as if there was something between them. Brittany already regretted going there. Without even unwrapping the gifts, the girl ordered Aaron to bring all of this to the treatment center. The maid could not believe her ears, because these were gifts from Madame Catherine. She suggested opening at least a couple of them. Brittany responded with anger in her voice, that it was all for show. She didn't want these gifts. The girl couldn't wait to tell Castiel and Emma what had happened. Catherine was probably planning something. The man was furious that this girl dared to reject gifts from the mistress. The woman agreed with him completely. No matter how much Prince Castiel cherished her, it was too much, she suggested, openly rebelling. For Catherine, the whole situation made no difference. She sent gifts simply to make her contribution. She waved her hand and asked them to leave, as she needed to take care of the rest. The man and the woman were incredibly outraged that the lady would leave this situation without attention. The man was going to go and complain himself. Looking at them intently, Catherine sternly asked, since when in her palace did anyone dare to raise their voice except herself? The couple froze, and they were saved only by the fact that the lady was informed that her son Theo had arrived. The prince came in gloomier than a thundercloud. The woman noticed that her son was late and asked if he was very busy. The prince received word that his mother had sent Brittany generous gifts. Theo was angry that rumors had already spread throughout the palace. The woman was as calm as possible. She tried to explain that rumors are always exaggerated, and her gifts were only a small compensation. The prince did not calm down. He wanted to know what his mother had planned, since she had even called the girl yesterday, asking for treatment. Theo squeezed his fingers tightly and demanded that Catherine stop playing this ridiculous game. Gritting his teeth, he repeated that he had asked them to leave this girl alone. With anger in his voice, Theo asked again why his mother was doing all this. His further actions depended on her answer. Catherine laughed, calling her son too emotional. She was glad because it seemed her choice was not wrong. Theo demanded that his mother come to her senses, since she knew very well that patience was not his strong point. Catherine tried to calm her son down, saying that she had done nothing, that she had been helped, and that she had simply reciprocated. Now this was indeed the case, but the prince asked what his mother planned to do in the future. She answered as it is, that she would try to attract this girl to her side. From these words, the guy even shuddered. Hans told Katrina something interesting, that the curse placed on Castiel was weakened not because of the cat from the prophecy, but because of Brittany. Theo didn't understand if it was really revealed that Brittany was that cat. If so, then this is the most terrible outcome. In the end, blood will be shed. Catherine believed that if they could persuade the girl to their side, they would be able to find and destroy Castiel's hidden cat, stabilizing the curse. Theo breathed a sigh of relief. The worst had been avoided. Looking at her son, the woman said that she had overestimated him. She did not expect him to behave so meekly. Smirking, Catherine asked Theo if he was really going to watch Brittany in his brother's arms. Only after these words did he realize that he was in love with this girl. It all started with curiosity, sparked by an old attachment. Without knowing it, Prince Theo placed his heart in her hand. As payment for her cooperation with the Sultan and Castiel, it was decided that Brittany would receive a large sum of money and land, as was written in a document found in Grand's house. Catherine believed that it would be easier to do this solely through monetary compensation. Theo didn't care how much it would cost. He asked his mother to try to lure Brittany to their side, and he would take care of the financial side of the issue himself. It seemed that the prince had no intention of conducting negotiations on his own. Catherine thought that it would be the other way around. He could have, but he wanted to avoid hatred. It is natural for a young man to be fascinated by a beautiful and capable woman. Even though Theo's mind was shaken, Catherine thought that he would soon return to it. But a change might appear. As he left, the prince told his mother that she too should be careful, since rumors were a dangerous thing. Theo was in his room, thinking about his mother's words, that it would be easier to do this with an exclusive monetary reward. The next day, the prince's room. Someone knocked on the door. Brittany reluctantly asked who it was. Erin looked at the lady with fear and began to justify herself by saying that she had told the guest not to come in, but he had been too persistent. At that moment, Theo entered the room. With a fake smile on his face, he told Brittany that they hadn't seen each other for a long time, asking if she was okay. The girl was not at all happy to see him, but she thanked the gentleman for the time he had provided her with temporary protection. Theo began to look around, trying to find his brother, since this was his room. Brittany began to nervously stop the guy, trying to explain that he had no right to just come in there. The prince froze, sincerely not understanding why such a ban suddenly affected him. The girl began to get angry at such impudence. Brittany knew full well that if Castiel found out that his brother had entered his room when he wasn't there, he would be furious that Theo was alone in the room with Brittany. The girl began to push the guy out of the room, suggesting that they take a walk outside, since the weather was good for a walk. In any case, the prince had no choice, and he agreed, since this was also a good idea. Once outside, the girl asked him why he had suddenly come without warning and frightened her. Theo smiled broadly and replied that they were friends, and friends tend to want to meet. But it was clear that he was not going to reveal the real reason. Looking into his eyes, Brittany replied that it was not like him to come like that. The prince ignored her words, asking if the girl would really share a room with his brother. With disdain in her voice, she replied that that was more or less the case. Theo was extremely surprised to think that Brittany didn't have her own bedroom. The girl felt awkward from such questions. She briefly answered that she did not plan to stay here forever and that she needed her own full-fledged housing. In response, she heard from Theo that, like with the treatment center, he thought his brother would help Brittany in many ways. But he couldn't believe that Castiel didn't provide her with a home. The gentleman began to extol himself, saying that if he were his brother, he would immediately give Brittany dozens of mansions. At this moment, she felt even more awkward. The girl began to ask Tay not to joke like that, since it was too much. Looking into Brittany's eyes, the prince asked in bewilderment what the jokes had to do with it, since he was speaking quite seriously. He warned the girl that if she suddenly needed something, she should not be shy, but turn to him. If she asked to get a star from the sky, he would get it. If she wanted to become a queen, he would help. Moving closer to Brittany, almost point blank, Theo whispered that if she wanted something, she just had to tell him about it. Theo waited for some kind of reaction from the girl, but she was in great confusion, not knowing what to say. Suddenly, the prince shuddered, as they were no longer alone. Castiel appeared out of nowhere. He was furious. The prince sternly asked his brother, since when he was able to enter his palace so freely. Theo had a sly smile on his face. His brother's appearance was untimely, but nothing could be done. The uninvited guest replied that he had just come to say hello. Approaching his brother, Castiel waved his hand at him and angrily said that if he was here for such a trivial matter, he should get out of here. Theo looked at the prince in bewilderment. He then turned and walked away, saying that some people never change, promising that next time he would come with something that would excite Castiel. These words angered the prince even more. He was about to attack his brother, but Brittany grabbed his hand in time, trying to stop him. Squeezing his hand tightly, the girl began to justify herself that everything was fine and nothing had happened. Castiel, with the same malice in his voice, replied that since Theo was in his palace, then nothing should have happened, but still asked her if there was anything strange. After thinking for a moment, Brittany scratched her cheek and replied that, in fact, his brother said something suspicious and started talking about dozens of mansions. At that moment, Castiel seemed to withdraw into himself. He no longer heard anything that the girl was saying. He only thought about the fact that she was left alone with his brother. After a couple of minutes, Brittany realized that the prince was not listening to her and began to call him loudly. Only when she had already switched to screaming, he flinched. From his expression, the girl realized that he was clearly worried. Gently touching Castiel's hand, Brittany squeezed it tightly and admitted that it was time to say what she had wanted to say all along. The prince looked at the girl in bewilderment. Most likely, he expected to hear that. In fact, she liked him and no one else but him. Brittany, getting as close to Castiel as possible, began to say what was bothering her so much. But suddenly, she fell silent. She pulled away from him abruptly and started shouting that she would tell him everything next time, but not now. Blushing slightly, the prince replied that in any case, he wanted to say that his mother wanted to see the girl. Brittany was extremely surprised by what she heard. This place seemed very familiar to the girl. Suddenly, she heard someone's voice, which told her that they had met earlier than she thought. Brittany's body was currently in a state of suspended animation. Initially, she had to turn into a cat in order to heal herself. Some force kept her in human form. Goddess Britain thought about it, as it looked more like the poison was preventing the transformation. This poison contained the power of the foreign god Shamash. Brittany was surprised, because she knew that Shamash was the sun god. The girl wanted to ask the goddess for clarification regarding the man who wanted to kill her, but the saint interrupted her, since she had already said that she could not interfere in human affairs. The drink Brittany drank was poisoned, but luckily it wasn't a curse. Now the girl understood what the gift meant. It seems that Catherine could not attract her to her side and decided to get rid of her. In any case, if she is now in a state of suspended animation, then she cannot return. Britain confirmed that this was the case. However, Brittany had to understand that if she did not fully recover her strength now, she would not be able to prepare for the future. The goddess reassured the girl by saying that she would not die yet, but the people around her were still worried. Before Brittany could even comprehend what was going on, the saint shoved her right into the water. Opening her eyes, the girl saw Castiel in front of her, who seemed extremely worried. With a smile on her face, she asked him what that stupid expression was. Brittany was delighted because even Grand was near her bed. The priest said that it was therefore very likely that the curse of another god was at work in the girl's body, and that she had personally met the attacker. Castiel was furious because his brother's family was the only one Brittany had been interacting with lately. Katrin was furious that even such an easy task could not be handled. Her foundation and the orphanage were overwhelmed with resources. Everything had to go right. Theo ran into the room at the sound of screaming and breaking glass. Looking at his mother, he assumed that she had gone crazy. The woman said in despair that the rumor had already spread beyond her palace. Theo was angry as never before. He started shouting that he had warned his mother, told her not to touch Brittany. They had agreed on this. At this point, Catherine seemed to calm down, asking her son not to fuss, justifying herself by saying that circumstances could always turn out differently. Despite Theo's screams, the woman continued to explain that she wanted to act in accordance with his wishes, but there was nothing she could do if the situation had already changed. Catherine considered Brittany dangerous. If they couldn't get her on their side, then it would be better to get rid of her. The woman again warned her son that if he was going to go against his mother, he should expect it. Theo clenched his fist tightly and said through clenched teeth that from the moment Catherine poisoned Brittany, they became strangers forever. The prince warned the woman that from now on, he would not treat her like a mother. Catherine just smirked, as she was sure that with time, Theo would understand everything, since this was a mother's sacrifice for the sake of her child. The boy was convinced that this was absolutely not true, since his mother did not think of him in that way at all. As he left, he promised that now he too would have no expectations from his so-called mother. These words seemed to touch Catherine. She began to shout that she could give Theo everything, this kingdom and power that even Emma could not have. The son only calmly answered her that he had never asked for anything like that. These words and Theo's look touched the woman. She asked her son not to look at her with that face, as he looked like he did the last time he looked at her. Tell said he could explain exactly what it felt like. Disappointment beyond contempt. Catherine began to laugh hysterically, believing that her son did not understand at all why she was taking on this dirty work. She began to pound her fists on the table and scream that she would die, watching Theo ascend to the throne. When the time came, Catherine promised that she would make both Emma and Castiel disappear. Their heads bowed on the scaffold, and she would dig up the former sultan's grave and burn everything to the ground. All these words sounded too pitiful, since Theo believed that his mother was deliberately making herself look so unhappy. Aslan, she was a female bodyguard and an aristocrat, taught Brittany how to walk correctly. The girl was so exhausted that she fell to the floor without strength and begged to be given time to rest. Shortly before this, Brittany's tea party was interrupted by Aaron, who announced in a joyful voice that it was time for the lady to get ready. The girl looked at the maid with bewilderment. It turned out that it was time to prepare for dance practice as part of the preparation for future events in the imperial palace. Brittany didn't expect to have to get ready so suddenly, as she had planned to take a little nap. Aaron pretended not to hear her words and enthusiastically continued to tell that she had brought a special teacher for the lady. This teacher turned out to be a fan of his craft. He did not give Brittany a minute to rest, demanding that she open her eyes and continue training. At that moment, the girl felt a shiver, and this feeling seemed painfully familiar to her. At that moment, Castiel came up. With a smirk on his face, he noticed that Brittany was having a hard time dancing. He asked if Aslan had driven her yet. The teacher bowed her head to the prince, greeting him, but the girl blushed in a second, as she was afraid that the prince saw all her failures. Castiel smiled and replied that he didn't know what she was talking about, but he was here to become her partner. Turning his gaze to Aslan, he sarcastically clarified that she was tired. The teacher quickly replied that she had just felt tired. Extending her hand to him, Brittany warned him that it was not her fault if she stepped on the prince's feet. As soon as the music started, Castiel twirled the girl around in a dance, informing her that the approximate date of the tour had already been set. Brittany was slightly surprised that he was talking about the tour they had discussed last time. The prince confirmed that in about a month, a visit to 3 or 4 cities will take about 3 weeks. The girl happily wanted to say that she would pack her things, but before she could finish speaking, she stepped on His Highness's foot. She staggered and almost fell, but Castiel quickly reacted and caught her by the waist. Looking into Brittany's eyes, The prince said that he had heard from Grand that if she restored the energy stored in the pendant, she would be able to temporarily maintain human form. The girl was shocked by what she heard. She couldn't believe it was true. Castiel, not hiding his smile, said that this would be her first time without strict restrictions, so she should tell him if she wanted to do something. Brittany looked into his eyes. All her thoughts seemed to be mixed up in her head. She in the form of a person. The two of them. Still, having collected her thoughts, she said that first she wanted a night walk, then a walk with Castiel, admiring the moon. Nothing more grandiose came to her mind. The day before leaving, the girl actively checked her things so as not to forget anything. Thanks to Aaron, Brittany had a huge amount of luggage. The maid was sure that the best of the best would come, so the mistress could not stand aside. Before leaving, there was only one thing left. The girl received a letter from Theo. He wrote that he wanted to meet her if they were still friends. Then he begged her to come to the meeting. She thought for a long time about what to do, but still decided to come to this meeting. The prince was very glad to see her. He admitted that he had been thinking about what to say, what expression to look at her with, how to apologize for his sins. Brittany began to reassure Theo that he had nothing to apologize for. At least she knew he wasn't the type to do that to her. The prince looked at her with bewilderment. It seemed that this girl trusted him. Brittany had no reason to do otherwise, since he still kept her secret. That's why she came here to say that if Theo felt uncomfortable because of her, then he shouldn't. After a short pause, the prince admitted that this girl really always exceeds his expectations. He took out the box, opened it. There was a pendant. Theo asked Brittany to accept this gift as an apology, if she didn't mind, of course. The girl did not hide her emotions. This pendant looked truly beautiful. Smiling, she replied that she only valued his attention, considering her situation. It seemed that it would be difficult for them to communicate in the future. Theo closed the case containing the jewelry, saying that he understood, as expected, that this was too much for a friendly relationship. Brittany was happy because she knew he would understand her. She had to go already, since she couldn't be away for long. Putting his hood over his head, Theo thanked her for meeting him. As they parted, Brittany told him that he looked exhausted and asked him to take care of himself. The prince was left alone with himself and his thoughts. Catherine was furious. Everything was not going according to her plan at all. She ordered her servant to contact the mercenary guild. By handing them the letter, she was sure that it would turn the trip into a grave for Brittany and Castiel. This was the girl's first journey, and she already regretted that she had gone on it, because no matter how long they walked, there was desert all around. Castiel stroked her head gently and asked her to be patient for a little while, as they would arrive in Kapat in about 2 hours. This was to be their first stop. They were to visit Kapat, Ika, and Dinar, in that order. Later, the Sultan promised to tell them why they would turn back after these cities. Brittany noticed that there was sand everywhere. She had heard that there was always something hidden in the desert. Castiel chuckled and said that wasn't always the case. Then he pointed his finger to the side and asked to look there. The girl froze from beauty and admiration. She did not think that she would ever see something like this in her life. The Sultan was pleased with himself, as he wanted to show exactly this stunning view. He wanted to give Brittany not only that, but everything she loved and desired. Castiel was greeted warmly by a man who was very happy to see his master. The Sultan asked for forgiveness, as he was looking at the nearest oasis, and for this very reason, he was a little delayed. The man looked at the gentleman in bewilderment. At this point, Castiel carefully sat Brittany down, as she was quite tired. The man immediately began to make excuses so that the Sultan would not worry, since it was a great honor for them to receive him. They had arranged a feast that was about to begin, so the Sultan and his companion were expected to be ready. Turning to Brittany, Castiel asked her what they would do, as she was tired and seemed to want to rest. It seems the girl didn't expect that she would be allowed to do it so easily. She admitted that, in fact, after traveling in the heat, she would like to rest a little. Castiel had no problem letting her come to her senses, as they had a difficult journey ahead of them tomorrow. All this time, someone was secretly watching them. After Brittany was led to her chambers, a stranger approached the Sultan from behind and greeted him. It turned out that Castiel knew this man and did not even turn around, only asking if there was progress. The man replied that she had made her move. It was about Catherine. It seemed that this woman had begun to act decisively. Once in her room, Brittany sat down on the soft sofa. This town seemed so small and quiet, so she was sure that she would be able to rest well. Looking at Aaron, The girl said that it was so nice to be outside the capital, but the maid had no face. She was on the edge. She started screaming loudly that she really liked all of this. The coastal desert they saw today was even more beautiful than Aaron had imagined. Serving Brittany was truly a joy for this girl. The lady smiled, as she was a little scared, because her maid looked disappointed. Blushing slightly, Aaron admitted that she would very much like to attend the feast. Since today's reception was quite small, Brittany suggested that they attend the celebration that would take place afterwards. The maid began to wave her hands vigorously because they had come such a long way, and she considered it boring to sit in the room on the very first night. Brittany laughed out loud. She agreed to go to the feast since Aaron wanted to see it so much. Since the maid was busy taking care of her mistress from morning to evening, this was the least she could do for her. Aaron took care of Brittany even during vacations when she needed to rest. Meanwhile, the maid was actively rummaging through the suitcase, and it turned out that she had taken with her a dress that went perfectly with the desert. Finding herself at the event, Brittany was surprised. Such a small but noisy feast. Even the troupe was invited. All this was because Castiel arrived. The girl heard the gentleman introduce all the young girls present to the Sultan. At that moment, Brittany imagined him in festive attire, as if girls had been brought to him for matchmaking. She immediately grabbed her face with her hand and began to justify herself by saying that her head was ringing because of the loud music. Castiel began to politely explain that his heart was already taken, and it was difficult for him to sit here, so he would go. Aaron began to ask her mistress for forgiveness, because of her, she was overtired and tired. But thanks to her, the servants saw a feast on foreign land. Brittany didn't hear her words, because she couldn't think of anything else but Castiel's words that his heart was already taken. The knights began to whisper among themselves that something strange was happening between Lady Brittany and Castiel. On the surface, it seemed like their relationship had returned to normal. They even became closer during this journey. The knights could not understand whether something had happened yesterday during the halt. There was no time to discuss this topic further, as it was necessary to pack things, because they were about to arrive in Dinard. In this city, they were joyfully met by a certain woman, saying that she was glad to see Castiel and his companion Brittany. The girl was surprised that they knew her name here, but it turned out that she was a very famous person. Appearing suddenly, like a comet, stories about Brittany created a real sensation. The woman extended her hand to greet her. Castiel didn't let Brittany reach out in return, hugging her and telling his aunt that they were pretty tired and it was best to know when to stop. The girl was extremely surprised that this was the Sultan's aunt. The woman smiled as she realized that the girl had not been told about her. It turns out that she is Emma Hannah's younger sister, and also Queen Dinara. The people who had previously helped them in the desert were her soldiers. Since the Sultan and his companion were tired, Hannah told them to rest, asking Brittany to find her afterwards. Having wished to enjoy her stay in Dinard, the queen withdrew. It was clear from the girl's face that she was simply delighted with this woman's energy. After resting, Brittany met with Hannah. The queen asked her if the girl had abilities. The girl exhaled easily. That's what she meant. Hannah laughed. She couldn't say it directly yesterday, since they were in too crowded a place. The queen extended her hand, which was covered in bruises, to Brittany, wanting to test her strength in action. After just a few seconds, Hannah's hands were completely healthy. The queen immediately pounced on Brittany and began to hug her and shout that it was incredible. Where did her sister dig up such a treasure? When the woman came to, she said that it seemed that the girl did not understand the full danger of possessing such powers. She wished her to be more careful. Here, Brittany remembered the situation when people were breaking into them, but that time they managed to send them back. But next time, they would have to use force. The girl agreed with Hannah because she was absolutely right. It was almost impossible to receive treatment from a priest with divine powers anywhere outside the capital. Even now, the number of churches has significantly decreased. Brittany heard this from the head priest. It's all about the law that the previous sultan passed. Hannah felt it was inappropriate to sacrifice the lives of those living carefree lives in heaven. The woman was convinced that the time had come to forget about the kingdom of God. It's time for people to rise up on their own. Brittany didn't understand what independence was being discussed. Looking at the girl in Castiel, Hannah remembered Emma and Mahmet. The atmosphere was a little different, of course, but she had the feeling that the two were right for each other. Queen Dinara asked Brittany how far she and the Sultan had gone, but the girl did not understand what exactly she meant. After thinking for a moment, she started yelling at Hannah. How could a woman even ask such a thing? Hannah was restless. Obviously, there had been no proposal yet, but she was curious what Brittany thought. This question caught the girl off guard. She hesitated, and various situations related to Castiel began to pop up in her head. She hung there for a moment and was brought back to her senses by Hannah, who began to touch the girl on the shoulder. Queen Dinara knew she must have a lot on her mind, so she warned Brittany to be careful in making decisions. In any case, she hoped that everything would work out well for the two of them. It was the first time she saw her nephew so inspired. Although he was inexperienced, he acted sincerely. These words gave Brittany a lot to think about. In Dinara, she learned that the Sultan had never been intimate with women. It seemed that the hurricane had passed, and before leaving, Hannah wished Brittany good luck and told her not to hesitate to contact her about anything. The girl has lived for her own pleasure for too long. It's time to sort everything out. She had no doubt about Castiel's love, but even if they confirmed their feelings, would they be able to withstand the close attention from others? It was all too difficult for Brittany. Was it the same for Emma? The girl's thoughts were interrupted by a female voice, which offered Castiel to drink tea and get to know each other better before the banquet. Brittany was eavesdropping unwittingly and was outraged that this stranger was asking him out on a date. Having the audacity, she began to touch the Sultan and say that she did not think that this was a bad proposal. Castiel just stood there silently, neither refusing the offer nor agreeing to it. The girl called the gentleman. He came to his senses and apologized to her. Taking the girl's hand to remove it from himself, he replied that he saw nothing wrong with the offer, since she had a good reputation. He then added that he already has a loved one, which is why he is forced to refuse. He then said something that made Brittany shudder, that his loved one was now behind him, could see him clearly, so he was making his intentions clear. The girl felt incredibly ashamed that she had been noticed. Castiel quietly approached her and said that he didn't know she liked to eavesdrop. Brittany pretended not to hear his taunt and asked if he was being too direct with the word no. The Sultan took her hand and said that he had not lied, but had always wanted to tell her about his love. With a slightly shaky voice, Brittany asked what if he was insulted for it. Castiel laughed, because he was sure that no one would dare to do that, because even in front of the goddess of Britain, he would say the same thing. Barely audible, the girl replied that if so, then good. The Sultan gently tucked a strand of hair behind Brittany's ear and said that he felt good with her. After these words, he was about to kiss her, but a third person appeared in the room. At that very moment, Brittany pushed Castiel away from her, and Hannah said that she wanted to tell the girl something, so she came back, but it seemed at the wrong time. With a grin, the woman apologized for interrupting them, but she was surprised that her nephew was so open. Castiel asked his aunt with displeasure what she wanted. Hannah laughed. It had been a long time since she had seen the Sultan like this. The queen was planning a grand feast starting tomorrow. Castiel thanked her, but made it clear that they did not intend to stay there long. This did not stop Hannah from starting the feast from today. Brittany was surprised that this was possible. That same day, the girl happily began to dance with her partner. Castiel warned her that she should speak up if she was having a hard time, since she had been in an unfamiliar place for several days. Brittany happily suggested that they rest a little, sit down somewhere, otherwise she was going to go crazy. The Sultan liked this idea. At that very moment, he grabbed the girl in his arms and carried her somewhere. With a happy look, he told Brittany that there was nothing wrong with his actions. They were lovers after all. Castiel brought the girl to some incredible place with a gorgeous view of the city. It turned out that the night view of Dinar is famous for its beauty. The landscapes here were stunning, and the Sultan really wanted to show them to his beloved. At that moment, Castiel remembered that Brittany was looking for a place to sit down. He was worried about her, whether she accidentally twisted her ankle. Smiling, the girl replied that she was simply tired of so many people looking at her. The Sultan began to worry that this was causing his beloved inconvenience, but Brittany replied that this was not the case. He asked her to tell him if she felt any discomfort or pain. He was there. Castiel admitted that he felt better just being around her, but he couldn't offer anything substantial in return. That's why he always wanted to show her something better and also pay more attention to her. Brittany felt uneasy about such confessions and immediately told him that he didn't need to give anything in return. It was enough for her that he was next to her. Castiel stood by his words, as he wanted to do everything in his power to make her happy. Brittany understood all this and felt the same way. After these words, the Sultan tenderly embraced his beloved and kissed her. Hannah asked her nephew if it was true that he wanted to go that way tomorrow. Castiel replied that she should have heard about it. The queen was against it, even if she agreed, because that place should not be revealed. Because where has it been seen that sympathy lasts forever? There will be problems if the information leaks. Castiel insisted that Brittany could be shown, since she had already saved his life once. Hannah looked at her nephew and thought that he was not Makhmet's son. The girl felt uneasy after she found out that they would be traveling along an unknown road, and for some reason it became cooler. Castiel replied that they were in the highlands, and it was always fresher there. They made a small detour, but visited Dinara, including because he wanted to stop by this place. Brittany looked around carefully and realized that there was nothing to see here at all. Finally, the very view that the Sultan wanted to show his beloved opened up before them. It was a parade ground where they raised the finest warriors who would become his mother's strength, or more accurately, his strength. Brittany was shocked because she knew that these people had nowhere to go now. Castiel firmly stated that the day had been set. He would disperse all the current royal janissaries. The Sultan was going to pull them out by the roots, and soon their place would be taken by those who were now in front of them. Castiel's main goal was to deal with Katrina and her minions. Brittany didn't respond to his words, but began to worry about what would happen to Theo if his mother backed down. Castiel will never turn a blind eye to her attempt to kill his beloved. In that case, Theo might get hurt too. The girl began to push these thoughts away from herself, since she was meddling in something that wasn't her business. Still, she continued to think about it, because something was bothering her heart. When Master Castiel and Mistress Brittany returned, the subjects greeted them with joy on their faces. Only Catherine was unhappy, as she did not understand how they managed to return safe and sound. Something was wrong, because the Sultan returned by a different route. Harold was furious. His sister ordered a spy to be sent to scour the length and breadth of Dinar. Grabbing her brother, Catherine told him not to repeat her mistakes. This time, everything should work out. Brittany found it strange that she hadn't turned into a cat yet. A week has passed since the trip, and it is time to contact. The girl had been in human form for too long, but she did not experience any strange symptoms. Grand asked her if something had happened to her since time was passing, and the girl still had not become a cat. This confirmed her fears, and everything was fine with her body. Surprisingly, Brittany did not feel tired at all. Her eyes lit up at the thought that she could become human forever. Grand confidently stated that this was completely out of the question, since the girl had not yet acquired her perfect form. He asked to give her hand so he could have a look. Running his hand over Brittany's hand, Grand said that her energy was currently confused. She had an excess of divine energy. The priest frowned and asked if the girl wanted to tell him anything. Brittany flinched, not understanding what he meant. With a trembling voice, she admitted that she could not refuse Castiel intimacy. She immediately began to justify herself by saying that she had done everything she could to abstain. Grand began to reason that apparently the point was that these two kissed not only for the sake of transformations. This was causing overload. But there is a solution. The priest used to ask Brittany not to take off the choker, even if she was uncomfortable. At such moments, it acts as a kind of energy storage, and due to the fact that the girl observed this condition, a lot of it accumulated there. Still, it would have been better for her to turn into a cat to stabilize the energy, because that way Brittany would be more receptive to the goddess's powers. Grand asked her to close her eyes for a moment, and with the help of the accumulated divine energy, he would turn her into a cat. After some time, everything was ready. The girl became a cat again. She experienced an indescribable feeling. It seemed that she became much lighter and full of strength. Unexpectedly, Grand stated that Brittany must now refrain from touching Mr. Castiel for half a month, as this is necessary for a stable recovery. The Sultan could not believe his ears that they now had to refrain from touching for half a month. They lived in the same room. It was almost impossible. Left alone, Castiel told Brittany that he heard Grand say that she would have to be in cat form for a while. At this moment, his expression seemed gloomy and sad. Brittany was relieved that she wasn't the only one feeling annoyed. The Sultan began to gently scratch the cat, saying that he was a little sad, but he liked her in this guise. Brittany was still just as sweet to him. When they fall asleep together, he feels warm and cozy. His tummy is so incredibly soft that it simply amazes him. These words obviously did not please the cat, so she became angry, but this only made Castiel laugh. The Sultan began to reassure her that no matter how she looked, his attitude towards her would not change. He would take care of her until she recovered. Castiel believed that time would fly by faster than she thought. Basically, that's what happened. But for some reason, Brittany didn't turn back. 2 weeks passed very quickly indeed. But the problem was not solved. Castiel also noticed that today was the last day, but there were still no changes. Brittany decided to take matters into her own hands and force herself to become human by kissing the Sultan. It seemed surprising, because nothing happened. Castiel looked gloomier than a thundercloud and immediately went after Grand to sort out the situation. The priest began to scold them like little children, saying that they had been given a task, but they had failed to carry it out. If no symptoms appeared during the transformation, it may simply be a temporary condition. It seems like it would be better for these two to live in separate bedrooms for a while. Castiel was worried that Brittany's body would be okay. Grand replied that there was no need to worry. It was a process of getting used to sudden changes in the body. The cat only hoped that all this was temporary. Still, she was worried about whether this was normal. People have also noticed the absence of Ms. Brittany lately. After the tour, she disappeared somewhere. One of the ladies started spreading rumors about this in the market. The rumors were that Emma and Castiel were holding the saint. People were horrified. Could this really be true? Because everything matches the time of Mrs. Brittany's disappearance. The gossip began to say that the girl pretended that this was not so. But in the end, Emma also wanted to monopolize power over the saint. Rumors quickly reached the palace that Madame Brittany had not been seen lately because it was the fault of the Sultan and his mother. These two captured the Lord to control her, talking about how using holy power on subordinates is a waste. The maids took this to be true, since Brittany had not been seen lately. If this was not so, then there was no other explanation. The maids' conversation was interrupted by the cat, which suddenly jumped off the sofa. Brittany didn't understand how this had happened, how public opinion could have gotten to this point. Was it because she was rarely seen in her usual guise, that a change of power was approaching, and Castiel and his mother's situation was getting worse? All this could have a negative impact on the Sultan. Now was not the time to give up. Brittany had to do everything in her power. If she could turn into a human, the rumors would immediately die down. But it is unknown if there is a way to do that right now. The cat began to think about a way to become human. If this continued, there was no turning back. This was her only option. Brittany didn't want Castiel to have a hard time because of her. She only intended to ask Theo for a favor once. Arin carefully examined the area. It seemed that the prince was in no hurry to avoid unnecessary glances. The maid asked Brittany if she was sure that everything would be okay. After all, he was Catherine's son, and it would be dangerous to contact this family now. The cat tried to show with her whole appearance that there was nothing to worry about. In fact, she didn't want things to get to this point, but there was no choice. Now, this was the only quick way. If such rumors had already begun to spread throughout the palace, it would be better to show up as soon as possible. A guy appeared in the shadows who didn't look like a prince. Taking a closer look, Brittany realized it was Theo, but with a different hair color. The guy began to make excuses, saying that he was late because it was difficult to get there, and he had to disguise himself. Arin handed the cat to Theo, saying that the lady had something to say and would be nearby, so she asked him to call her if anything happened. Taking the cat in his arms, the prince could not believe that he was seeing her sweet appearance again. She was still as beautiful, even though much time had passed. Deciding not to waste time, Brittany began to show with all her might that she wanted Theo to kiss her. There was confusion in the prince's eyes, as he found it difficult to understand what she meant, and he did not understand her gestures either. Brittany had no choice but to take matters into her own hands. The only way to turn into a human failed. Even a kiss with Theo didn't help. The prince froze in bewilderment as the cat began to speak in human language. At that moment, Brittany realized that this was indeed true. Theo called Arin to clarify the situation. The cat kissed him and suddenly began to speak in a human voice. She herself became frightened and lost consciousness. The maid asked him in a trembling voice if he knew that the cat lady was Brittany. Theo replied that he was aware of the situation. Since things have come to this, it is better for them to part, since if they notice the absence of the cat and the prince at the same time, this will arouse suspicion. From this situation, Theo could guess what was going on. Kissing him had a different effect than kissing his brother. It made him feel greedy. Castiel sat next to the cat, who was still unconscious, and remained silent. After some time, he finally asked Grand if it was true that Brittany had changed after kissing Theo. The priest confirmed that this was true. Arin fell to her knees in front of Castiel and, with tears in her eyes, begged him to forgive Brittany. In a trembling voice, she explained that the lady had no feelings for Theo. She did this to turn into a human. Since Brittany had a hard time in her cat form, the worse the atmosphere in the palace became, the more worried she became about Castiel. Arin dropped her head to the floor and continued to explain in a trembling voice that as soon as the lady learned that false rumors had begun to spread, she became sad. But after these words, the Sultan interrupted her. He wanted to hear the rest directly from Brittany. When the cat woke up, the first thing she remembered was that she could now speak, and then she saw Castiel sitting in front of her. The Sultan asked her if she was okay. Brittany's heart pounded with excitement. She was sure that the Sultan was very disappointed in her. She began to apologize for hiding it all this time, since she found out about it of her own free will. But she was wrong to keep silent, asking for forgiveness for trying to solve this problem by asking Theo for help. Brittany decided to be honest. The coronation was just around the corner. She couldn't let people talk bad about Castiel because of her. The more she was in cat form, the more bad rumors would spread. The Sultan stroked the cat tenderly and said that he knew everything, but reasoned that since there was no way to get her back, there was nothing they could do about it. It seems that's why he left her unattended, without taking any action, which ultimately drove Brittany into a dead end. Castiel also asked her for forgiveness, but he couldn't help but be jealous of her, so he didn't want her to do that anymore. Smiling, the Sultan thanked the cat for her honesty. Gently touching her face, he added that he would wait as long as it took for his secretive cat to reveal herself. Emma learned that these two, Castiel and Theo, could change a cat. The queen never thought that the opportunity to become Sultan would belong only to her son. She was also surprised that Grant had not predicted anything about Theo. Looking at his palm, the priest said that, as was already known, his abilities were gradually disappearing. It was not known whether he should think that this was, on the contrary, good. After a pause, Grandel said it looked like they might need to push back their planned dates a bit. Grand, a man who was called the closest to immortality alive and an intermediary of God, once an incredibly powerful man, several decades ago, after the disappearance of a saint from this kingdom, he began to gradually weaken. Grand's abilities were akin to those of a transcendental being, but he could only maintain his strength and prolong his life in the presence of a saint. The saints, who were the gods' intermediaries in the kingdom, naturally appeared from generation to generation, possessing divine power equal to that of Grand. Only when they turned 20 years old, they were dedicated to the gods. The Grand, who was like an instrument of the kingdom, experienced many births and deaths without any emotion. However, after meeting one woman, he changed completely. Her name was Verdiane, the girl he called Ver. She grew from a sweet child into a beautiful young woman, and although they were together for a short time, the depth of their feelings grew in proportion to the time they spent with each other. Despite the inevitable tragic end, they quickly became lovers. Their love was incredibly strong. As if mocking the long years they had lived together, the uncontrollably growing feelings only drew them closer to each other. It was impossible to restrain themselves. They loved each other as if tomorrow was their last. Metaphorically speaking, their love was strong enough to destroy Grand when she was 21. A year's delay was all that could be done. His beloved could not escape her planned death, and the goddess ceased to be an object of praise for him. The one who prayed every day began to resent the world, curse and hate the goddess. The world that needed a monster like him and a pathetic saint, he just wanted to disappear completely. The hatred stopped by the goddess he met in his dream opened a new path for him, the path that consisted of summoning a person with enormous holy power from another world here. A girl born in another world had just such a thing, but was soon doomed to death. Because of this incident, Grand wanted to change not only her fate, but his own. A few days later, Brittany found herself thinking that it had been a long time since she had been in human form. To disprove the rumors that had spread throughout the palace, it was announced to the entire kingdom that the girl was the very cat from the prophecy. Emma was sure that now even Catherine would not be able to touch the girl. There was no one who did not know that she was the cat from the prophecy and the beloved of the future Sultan. The day of the official announcement came quickly, and it's good that, thanks to Grand, Brittany was able to change her appearance. Castiel appeared out of nowhere and hugged the girl from behind. He asked what she was thinking that she didn't even notice his appearance. Stroking his hand, the girl noticed that he looked happy. It really was so, because today he can finally boast to the whole world that she is his. Brittany honestly didn't understand what the rush was about. She thought they would announce it right before Castiel became Sultan. It would be safer that way. After thinking for a moment, the future Sultan replied that they had moved the coronation ceremony forward by 6 months. The girl could not believe her ears that the coronation would take place in 6 months. She wanted to know why this happened, and if there was any explanation for it. Castiel hugged his beloved and replied that he wanted to gather strength to protect her as soon as possible and officially announce their relationship. The Sultan wanted Brittany to be safe and happy with him. After these words, he hugged her tightly. The girl was happy. She gently kissed Castiel on the cheek. As soon as the couple appeared in front of the people, they began to shout loudly, welcoming the goddess and the future Sultan. Catherine was urgently informed that the abdication of the current Sultan had occurred faster than expected. Clutching the piece of paper nervously, the woman said it happened because Theo was blinded by his love. Catherine was shaking with anger because she had raised her son to lack nothing, and he responded to her efforts with hostility. She regretted that she had not eliminated Brittany earlier. Having handed the letter to the servant, the woman ordered it to be secretly delivered to the palace. Angry at Theo, Catherine said that this should make him understand what was best for him. From this moment on, the prince must stop foolishly giving in to simple emotions. Catherine shuddered as the room smelled terrible. She asked Hans what he had done to cause such a terrible stench. The guy calmly replied that he had only pumped a little blood from the animal. Nothing could be done. There was no way to air it out. Catherine asked him, with hope in her voice, if he was sure that the curse would work this time, since it had been 10 years since the last one. To which she received the answer that the blue moon is returning. In other words, the second full moon is the time when Brittany's power is most weakened. Grand is also weakened. He will not be able to do anything. Catherine asked Hans to make sure everything went smoothly by asking him if he had forgotten the key points. They were going to kill Castiel in the most painful way possible and be done with it. With a wicked smile on his face, Hans replied that he hoped it would work. Grand stood near the prayer room. At that moment, the high priest, whom they had not seen for a long time, approached him. Grand said that this time he would stay in the prayer room for about half a month. The high priest replied that even the young found this place difficult to bear. Perhaps it would be better to visit the sanctuary, as in the previous passage. Grand, however, believed that in order to properly increase the holy power, it would be better to stay here, especially since the palace barrier had weakened. At that moment, the priest's hand began to fall apart. With a smile on his face, Grand said that he had a hard time even keeping his balance. It would be funny if he let his guard down and disappeared in an instant. The priest asked the high priest to take care of Brittany while he was gone. The Grand wanted the girl's condition to be checked once a day, and special attention to be paid to the palace barrier. The high priest promised that everything would be as he asked, and for now, Grand should focus on his recovery. Castiel had been feeling strange lately, perhaps due to his duties as the Sultan. He needed to take better care of himself so that Brittany wouldn't worry. The Sultan asked his assistant where Grand was now. It turned out that the priest would be staying in the temple's prayer room from today onwards to strengthen his power, and he must already be there. Castiel was outraged, because then who would monitor Brittany's condition? The assistant explained that Mr. Grand had asked the high priest to replace him. After hearing this, the Sultan felt relieved. When he had time, he should go to the high priest. He couldn't let Brittany see him in this state. At this moment, the gentleman was informed that a guest had come to see him. Castiel was surprised, as this was the first time someone had come so unceremoniously without warning. The Sultan ordered to say that he was busy. If the guest wanted to meet, then it should be agreed upon in advance. The servant tried to object, but Castiel angrily replied that he should not be forced to repeat his words twice. The door to the office opened suddenly, and Theo walked in. The prince explained that his brother had flatly refused to receive letters from him, so he had no choice but to come in person. Castiel squeezed the quill tightly in his hand and said angrily that they were not close enough to exchange letters. The Sultan pretended that he was very busy and had no time to chat with an uninvited guest, so he should talk about business and leave. Theo assumed that this would be the case, since his brother was the busiest man in the kingdom. Castiel wasn't about to make idle talk, so he warned that if his brother continued like this, he should leave immediately. Theo folded his hands behind his back and said he had come to talk about Castiel and Brittany. He was going to do it alone. The Sultan ordered everyone to leave except his assistant. Grinding his teeth in anger, Castiel said that he was not going to discuss Brittany with Theo. If he planned to use her secret as bait, then he would not let it go that easily. The prince laughed, because it was his brother who had been using this girl from the very beginning and until now. Castiel looked like he was barely holding himself back. He replied with a threatening tone that it was between him and Brittany, and that Theo should not get involved in this matter. The prince did not calm down. He wanted to know how long Castiel was going to use the girl. Was it really true that when he became the Sultan, he would have a place for Brittany next to him? Clutching his chest, the future Sultan demanded that he stop talking nonsense. Theo looked lost at this point. He stated that he highly doubted that his brother loved this girl. Castiel stood up abruptly from his chair and wanted to say something, but he staggered. It seemed he was very ill. Touching his mouth, the future Sultan discovered blood. After that, he fainted. Brittany looked at her paw and thought about Castiel. She heard some shouting to call Mr. Grand immediately. Then the cat saw the guards carrying Castiel's body on their shoulders. Grand was forced to return from the prayer room. He ordered that a minimum of servants be left in the room for treatment and asked everyone else to leave. The cat was also not allowed to be here, because if she stayed, she would be at risk due to the influence of other gods. Dawn came, but there was still no news of the Sultan. Even when Brittany tried to predict the future, nothing worked. And inaction only caused negative thoughts. She had to find something she could do herself. She entered the room. It was dark. At that very second, the cat was discovered. With a smile on his face, Grand said that he had a feeling she would come, so he left the door open. Bowing her head down, Brittany admitted that she felt like she was going crazy with worry, afraid that she could lose Castiel in an instant. She could still see him before her eyes, unconscious and bleeding, and the thought alone made her head go blank. It seemed that his vitality had not yet recovered, despite being treated all night. Looking at Brittany, Grand asked her if she wanted to save Castiel, even if it cost her life. The cat answered without hesitation that yes, she wanted to save his life even at the cost of her own. The priest smiled slightly, in which case he asked for a little help. Brittany didn't expect to become human again so quickly. This change is necessary to fully utilize her weakened healing abilities. The girl did not understand what she had to do, but she was ready for anything. Grand asked her to place one hand in his and the other on the left side of Castiel's chest, near his heart. Touching the Sultan's hand, the girl felt all its coldness. The priest asked her to concentrate and think about Castiel. She had to do it the same way she had healed many others before. Grand slowly channeled his power into Brittany. When he gave the signal, she had to pour it into Castiel. They only had one chance. This place seemed so familiar to the girl. But this door, she did not know and did not imagine what could be behind it. As she touched the door handle, she heard a voice telling her not to go in yet, which stopped her. At that moment, Brittany came to her senses. Grand looked happy as usual and explained that he had put all his efforts into it, which had caused some confusion. This place was a multi-dimensional world. One could say that it was something between heaven and earth. It turned out that Brittany had already been here with Grand, but she didn't remember it. It was necessary to get down to business. Firstly, Castiel was safe. The treatment was successful, so he would soon regain consciousness. The reason Gran brought the girl here again was to say goodbye to her. Seeing the priest's hand crumble, Brittany began to scream. She became afraid for him. She suddenly began to cry. The girl did not want to admit that Grand would really disappear without any warning. The priest did not ask her to understand him. His bringing her into this world and his disappearance were all his selfish actions. Without giving Brittany a chance to say a word, Grand continued his monologue about how he was just a tool that existed without knowing anything about emotions. He met a woman who showed him what love was, but the gods took her away very easily. So he found someone who could free him from the shackles of this burden. It was Sarah, aka Brittany. Grand asked to forgive him for using the girl, but he is grateful to her for being able to put an end to his torment and gain freedom. Brittany asked him to stop because she had a lot to tell him. Touching her face, he said that with the death of the Guardian, significant changes would occur in the kingdom. Grand asked Brittany to be the source of strength. The priest was confident that she would be the one to handle it. The girl could not hold back her tears. It was very difficult to accept what was happening. The first thing Brittany did after Grand disappeared was announce his death. Of course, people didn't believe in his absence. The high priest, who had foreseen such an outcome, quickly resolved the situation. It seemed as if Grand had embarked on a long journey, and despite the lack of a funeral or any formal proceedings, talk of him finally choosing the path he had always dreamed of was accepted. Another noticeable change was that Castiel's curse was completely gone. He quickly recovered his health and devoted himself entirely to preparing for the coronation ceremony. Brittany gained Gran's power, allowing her to maintain her human form and not be a cat all the time. However, on days of excessive work, transformation for rest became inevitable since the girl had absorbed Gran's power. It was quite obvious that she had taken on his duties. One of the most important tasks of the custodian was to protect the barrier stones everywhere, especially those surrounding the Sultan's palace. The endowment of these stones, whose very existence was a carefully guarded secret divine power, and the ensuring of their safety was now her burden. Although Brittany was still unable to fully utilize Gran's power, the high priest assured her that time would tell. She was very sorry that she had not learned more. The girl was very busy, but grateful that everything was going well. Despite everything, Brittany couldn't believe her ears when she was told that Gran had left a message for her. Emma, with a smile on her face, said that the priest had asked her to tell her not to be upset. Even though Brittany was the incarnation of God, the priest said she was a crybaby. The girl wondered if she had ever cried in front of Grande. It seemed she hadn't cried often enough to be called that. It turns out that Emma knew everything about Brittany's past, but Gran forbade her to talk about it, as he was sure that it would break her heart. The queen knew one thing for sure: fate cannot be defied, it must be accepted. It may not come as a consolation, but Gran always said he was glad to see Brittany again. Everything was going the way he wanted it to. The high priest just laughed, because he was very happy to see this again before he grew older and passed away. Emma looked at the girl and with a smile on her face said that she really was a crybaby. Meanwhile, Brittany couldn't contain her emotions and just stood there and cried. Gran was special to Emma, but he always seemed unhappy until he met Brittany. Hugging the girl, the queen said she had been watching him for decades, and he seemed happiest when he was with her. Emma asked Brittany to cry and then let him go. She was sure that the priest was undoubtedly grateful to this girl. After checking the barrier, the high priest said that it had become very strong. It looks like no negative energy will be entering the palace for some time. Brittany was worried about whether she would be able to take Gran's place with dignity, but now everything is fine. She felt relieved. The day was slowly drawing to an end, so the high priest suggested calling it a day. After these words, he staggered and began to fall, but Brittany managed to catch him in time. The priest began to justify himself by saying that when he walks for a long time, his legs sometimes start to hurt. Considering his age, his knees are not in the best condition. From that moment on, the girl promised to take care of the checks, as it might be difficult for the high priest to work due to his injury. The man squeezed Brittany's hand and admitted that this situation reminded him of a secret. They say that even a high priest, like a keeper of the kingdom or a saint, is born with a predetermined destiny. Originally, it was supposed to be another young priest next to Brittany, not him. That is, this meant that the supreme leader could have a successor. Someone with the necessary abilities must be in the kingdom. But perhaps the high priest is the last of them. The time is approaching when the world of the gods will come to an end. It is time for people to live, relying on their own strength. When that time came, the priests would no longer be needed. But Brittany began to worry that the kingdom would be endangered by outside threats if it were the first to lose the power of the gods. The girl heard that the barrier was barely holding. The high priest told her that as long as Brittany was here in this kingdom, this would not happen. Now she was tormented by the question of what would happen if she died or disappeared. Even though Brittany inherited Gran's power, it's just a power, and she won't be able to live as long as he did. In that case, it is unknown what will happen to the kingdom. The high priest told the girl not to worry too much. Everything flows according to the changes of time. It is time to forget about the reign of the gods.